You know what I mean? Like, you can't act like the fucking Davidian video was like Metallica's One, and it's just like a bunch of fucking long-haired dudes wearing black. No, man, he had baggy clothes and cornrows and pit bulls walking around fucking LA, walking around fucking Oakland. You know? Why are you surprised? You know what I mean?
Right. It doesn't. No, in no way on this album, especially, does it feel like he looked at what was going on and said, "I got to get me some of that."
Right.
It feels like it belongs in their songs that they've done here.
Right. And so
say what you want about like his rapping proficiency. Like I don't fucking know one way or the other, but it seems fine.
Yeah, on this album, it feels organic, it feels good or whatever. But yeah, I feel like that's a thing that like people like to talk shit about a lot, and it's like that's just who he fucking is. And if you don't like the hip hop influence, then you don't understand what you liked about Burn My Eyes from the fucking beginning. You know? Yeah. Because the reason that he sounds so much different than every other metal vocalist, and and the reason the rhythms are different, and the reason the guitar is different, that's a fucking part of it.
Yeah.
You know?
That's part of why that stood out at the time, because nobody else was really doing it that way.
Right. Episode 30, recorded June 25th, 2022. Okay, yeah, I don't have the mains up.
That's good. Sounds good.
I did last time.
The mains?
The monitors.
Oh, right.
Like the lion, like the main, like a sports team, like the Indianapolis Mains.
The Washington Mains, Washington D.C. Mains.
The Main Skins.
That's what they picked.
Yeah. So, howdy, Robert.
Hi, Richard.
I think this is going to be episode 30. I think.
Oh man, I thought we were like 32 already or something.
There was one of them I had to toss.
Okay.
I think but
well, we don't talk about that one then.
Yeah, so it's been a few weeks.
Yes.
And the last one we did was with CJ.
Mm-hmm.
And so there has just been so much that has been happening just like in my own life. and so and there's also like terrible things that happened like yesterday. You know,
there have been a number of things that have happened since we last recorded, and even before that we never talked about. But yeah,
and like so I don't know. So this episode could go. It could be like, yeah, stuff sucks. These albums are okay, and people listen to new metal until they didn't. For some reasons. That's it.
All right. Subscribe to the Patreon.
Shit. It could be that, or it could be this, a normal, long, sprawling thing, and I just don't really know what it's going to be right now.
It might be both.
Because I'm in a weird mood. I'm in a weird place. Just because of just everything that's been going on with me personally. And then Roe v. Wade was overturned yesterday.
Yes.
Which if you're like, I don't know if it's even useful for me to talk about, like right now, because it's like if you're some other dude that's like me and you want to listen to someone else process, how they're processing, maybe that's a value. But I'm like, you shouldn't be listening. You shouldn't be listening to me. you need to go listen to a woman and listen to what they're saying about it and listen to them. I'm not going to do a better job.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on it depends on what the hypothetical person would be looking for, right? If I think it's valuable to just say, hey, that's bullshit and it shouldn't have happened, and it
right,
women's right to choose is a very important thing,
right? And there's things that I have to I want to do because we're gonna get Max vaccinated here in the next few weeks, and I want to do like another episode with Allison sort of after we do that and release that one lickety split, sort of like maybe in the hopes that like hey, hey, we're parents, we just got our kid vaccinated, let's talk about it.
Right.
But
Yeah, because at this point, the vaccines have been approved for 5 to 6 months,
right,
for a couple weeks, I think, at this point.
maybe I don't even know.
If that even.
Time's slippery for me these
Right.
days.
Yeah.
So finally, because we were in that weird window, and so I'm sure we'll talk about Roe v. Wade more in depth.
Sure.
With her.
Sure.
She has a lot more nuance to say about it.
I'm sure.
In as far as like how it's going to directly affect like women just seeking care, like healthcare. Right. Yeah. And like what are the real consequences whenever you say like life begins at fertilization, right? Like who killed, like when we tried to do IVF and it didn't work, who killed those embryos? Like when they didn't work at the IVF clinic while we were here asleep. Like is it the embryologist who actually did it? Is he the murderer? Is Allison the murderer? Clearly I'm not, because I'm a man, I didn't do it. It's impossible for me to be
that is a hell of a statement.
Liable or responsible for any crime under this political paradigm that we're in. The
patriarchy.
Yes, the patriarchy. Yes, let's call it what it is.
I see.
And so
that is an entire other discussion. Yeah, there are implications. Yes.
So yeah, I mean,
I guess to your original point, you could go as deep as you want to go with this, or not.
Right, yeah, and I guess like, I don't know, man. The main thing. This is what's interesting to me. Or I don't know if it's interesting. Whatever. It's what I'm going. It's what's on my mind at the moment. Is that there's a lot of, and I was one of them. Like really in the kind of like center, like the kind of like the centrist, too cool for school kind of group of like the South Park libertarian of like, well, the dumbest thing you can do, right? That's like care.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is a terrible bullshit opinion, and it only helps those in power. Like there's like a famous what is his name? Oh my god, I can't remember his name. And I feel like an idiot.
I don't know.
He wrote my brain's not working. He wrote a famous book about the Holocaust that's like required reading. Whatever. I'm an idiot and I can't remember. Anyway, he has this famous quote about like, being neutral only helps those in power. Right. That kind of thing. So, but anyway,
yeah, if anyone is unfamiliar with that paradigm of the South Park centrist, it's like the idea that the politics that South Park was pushing and trading in for a very long time was like, well, everybody's shitty,
right.
So let's just be irreverent towards everything,
right, and
at all costs,
right, and like,
and that demonstrably, well, I don't know. In my opinion, it fucked up a lot of people for a long time.
It really, yeah, because it means that it allows certain people to think that people getting mad because their rights are getting taken away is the same as people getting mad because other people want rights. And so it's like, oh, gay people want to be married. And that's going to make me insane because I don't think gay people should be married. Blah, 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 blah. They should not, like the paradigm that someone, being able to do the same thing that you are able to do, that you lose something because of that. Right. And that people being mad, like that's something like, or in this case of like Roe v. Wade, like a right that they had is now being taken away. And people, like a centrist, that old, like if you were making a South Park episode about it in like 2006, then you would be like, see that person that cares? See that person that cares? They care about something and they're angry. They're stupid.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
You know what I mean?
That's what that sort of refers to.
And like, I'm not saying that, like, yeah, our two-party system's fucked. Democrats do fucked up shit. But I'm not asking.
Or don't do anything.
Or don't do anything. And I'm not saying that it's like, it's not like a, it's just, it's a complex thing or whatever. But I guess like what I'm, speaking to like my former self, like my 2016 self.
Sure.
Right. I voted for Hillary, but I voted in like, lesser of two evils, whatever. I don't really like her, but I despise Trump. But and then lots of people were mad, and I was like, well, you shouldn't be this mad. All these white women are just these
Mad that Hillary lost, you mean?
Yeah. All these educated white women are mad just because they're not used to not getting what they want. Like I said that. That ignorant sentence actually came out of my mouth, okay, in 2016. And not understanding, like, no, like the president gets to appoint Supreme Court justices and they have lifetime appointments. And that's like, we don't know what this guy's going to do. We know what he said he's going to do. And since he is not a career politician, he's not going to have, there's no risk for him to come in, appoint the most radical judges he can at all levels, and then deuce the fuck out. There's no, you know what I mean? Like, and so, and I was like, oh, all these women are upset. They're overreacting, blah, 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 blah. No, they weren't. Here we are. Exactly what they were afraid was going to happen. This is exactly what has happened.
Yeah.
And so
there's a really good tweet about me reaping, ha 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 ha, this fucking rules. Me sowing, oh shit, what the fuck, this sucks. So it's kind of, I mean, yeah, if you, yes, this was going to happen. If those seats in that time frame came up, then yes, this was going to fucking happen. Right. And now we're going to be seeing that for the rest of our lifetimes.
Yeah, like we're going to,
because these aren't old people.
They're not.
So,
and we're going to have to, like, we would have to have, I don't know, like several progressive, we'd have to just like keep, like, just luck out, like, to get enough progressive judges.
Actual progressives would have to hold office.
Yes.
Is the first step there.
Right. Actual progressives.
Because the sort of, the Hillary versus Trump thing, it, like, say what you want about how your attitude changed over time, which clearly it did, but it is, because we're already on this subject, it is shit sandwich, turd fucking sandwich, or whatever the fuck it was, the South Park thing. But that's not where you should be caring about that at.
Right. Like
in the first place.
Right. Like
by that point, it's too late.
Right. Like I'm not.
Not that you shouldn't care.
And I guess like that's what always gets frustrating to me when I end up having these conversations with some people is that if I advocate voting as left as you can, they'll it's like, oh, well, here's the reasons Hillary's bad and Hillary's this and or whatever, and it's like, yes.
But again, that's voting as left as you can from two choices.
Yeah.
There's no good.
Right. And it's like, I'm not following Biden. I'm not following Hillary in the same way that people follow Trump. Like, and I can't unvote the two-party system away. If I could like just not vote and then neither one of them was elected, okay, cool. Or if I could just not vote and the thing but that's the thing is like if 10 people voted, I don't know, is there a law that says? I don't think there is, Like, can you is there a minimum turnout that there has to be to legitimize an election? I don't think there is. So those decisions are going to be made, and those Supreme Court appointments are going to be made whether we vote or not. And if voting didn't matter, then like people on the right, then gerrymandering wouldn't be a thing. People wouldn't work so hard to suppress people's right to vote if voting didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So it really frustrates me, and like, or that aspect of it frustrates me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because yeah, it's like, yeah, man, fucking like Democrats suck because we don't have like a legitimate progressive party, right? Like we don't have like a difference between like, because like the Republican Party is really just the most power, like the most unscrupulous power grabbing party, and like once they started to lose power in the 70s, and then Reagan kind of, or in, first Nixon was like all law and order and all that sort of stuff, but then the Watergate thing, and that was, but then when Reagan figured out that he could sort of couple with the evangelicals, and then the religious right became a thing, that wasn't always a thing.
Yeah.
Like, in Republicans, like, oh, well, you'll vote for us? What do y'all want? Oh, y'all want us to say abortion's bad? Y'all want us to be against gay people? You got it.
Yes.
And it's like Reagan had friends that were gay because he was an actor, like friends of his family. You know what I mean? I mean, not because he was an actor, but because he grew up in Hollywood. You know what I mean? He came up in Hollywood for like decades.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he did nothing about the AIDS crisis. Absolutely nothing. Just ignored it. Because it didn't serve him politically. And so, and like, that's just no integrity, no backbone.
No. No, not at all.
And so, and then you have like the Democrats, which they're like, well, won't be as much of that as we have to be. Like they're kind of a reactionary party, but they're reacting against like what is like a really bad toxic thing. So it's like the best that, it's like, it's the best choice that I have. Like, I'm not like, it's hard to, I don't know, man. I'm spinning my wheel. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, the main point you already made is that there's no real progressive party out there. There's no real progressive option,
right,
at most levels of these choices that we're having to make.
And like, that's the thing, is that if people like, you could by voting shift the Democratic Party that way, by voting out the more conservative Democrats. Like, that could be done. That's possible, But anyway, I get frustrated when people like somehow act like, okay, well, the idea of getting more progressive candidates elected as Democratic representatives, that is less feasible than toppling the entire government and us not having a two-party system and us not having, or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
It's frustrating because you don't know the right answer there.
Yeah.
Because though, like, just taking a step back and looking at it from a single person's point of view, like, that sure does seem like maybe the only two choices we have, and neither of them are ever going to happen.
Right.
But, and so that is very frustrating. But yeah, I sure as hell don't have an answer there.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't feel like I'm adding anything, I guess. But don't worry, when we talk about in a few weeks, I will have finished reading a book about the history of evangelicals in America, and I will have like my very specific, nuanced, hot take on all of this. I'll have a very unique opinion that will look through a very particular lens and through my very own like special boy paradigm and my unique experiences, and because I have to bring something unique to the marketplace of ideas here.
Yeah, you definitely want a unique perspective. So let me go ahead and borrow that book from you, and I'll read it as well, and have my own unique perspective.
Yeah.
From the same book that you read.
From the same book. Yeah. But yeah, it's so strange. I guess like something else along the lines with this. I don't want to say much about this because I think it's gross to wade into it, but there's this thing that happens like now it's a rhythm that it seems like, where if I share something on my social media, on my personal social media, that's amplifying the voice of like a woman or amplifying the voice of a black person. Like, hey, this is an issue that like it happened, you know, when there was a shooting in Atlanta, and it was like, I know someone who lives there. This is what they think about it.
Right.
Shit, people that I haven't talked to since high, like it just always happens. Like it's just like clockwork, you know. People that I know and people that I know from playing in church, people I knew from high school, and then people I know from hippy dippy music. They all come out of the woodwork, and they get really, really upset, and they get really, really angry, and then I end up losing friends over it, because I'm like, here's how a woman feels about this, and I should have listened to them 6 years ago, and I didn't. Like, and I think it's just really interesting that's just a thing I expect now, and you know, and it's fine. It's like good riddance, man. But it's still like, it's like I have two choices. I can be respectful, and I think that's the thing that makes me the most mad, because I don't start off being nasty and mean. I start off because I'm trying to come from like a place of like personal reflection on everything and
Sure.
whatnot. But then whenever someone, because this is a bigger pattern that I see, as I see people trying to police who is allowed to express anger, and like white men getting upset and storming the Capitol, that's reasonable. But a woman being mad and throwing out a tweet that says bad things about Trump and the people he elected to the Supreme Court, oh man, that's just the Dems not being able to handle taking a loss, you know. And it's like, no, man, like you can't, you know.
Fuck them. Is my response to that. Like,
you know, it's.
I don't have anything to say constructive to that right now.
I don't either. It's just
fuck them, and
yeah, it's just like
it doesn't work that way. Is my answer to that.
You know, and I don't know. It makes me think about masculinity, and it makes me think about this idea that, you know, there's two primary ways that you can perform masculinity, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, masculinity can be performed in a lot of ways, but emotionally, right? Like the two primary emotions that you can exhibit, where no one is going to criticize or doubt your masculinity, and that is anger and indifference.
Yeah.
You know, that's what
those are two of the defining traits of quote unquote like traditional masculinity.
Exactly.
So yes, of course they wouldn't question those two things.
Exactly.
Like, oh, that's par for the course.
Right. And so when you live in a system that is patriarchal, as our society is, which means that there, you know, like that there's a hierarchy, and you know, like white men are on the top of that. So they have the most power, the most choice, and you also have this culture of what is masculine, what is not masculine, blah 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 blah. And if anger is a thing that tracks as masculine, well, you can't let women be angry. You can't let black people be angry. You know, you have to you police this anger, because if they're able to be, if they're men, then they deserve a place. And you know, I mean, if they're able to have those qualities, right? You know, and so.
Did you watch those new FD Signifier videos?
I watched the first one.
Okay.
I watched the first one.
Yeah.
So.
I already watched them both. They're fucking good.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
There's a lot in there.
There's a whole lot in there.
And so, and I mean, and like as an example, like, because again, I'm trying to be personal, and I'm trying to like come from a place of growth about these ideas and examining masculinity and what it means and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, I realized that was a thing within myself of like, I had a real problem with Allison expressing
with that
anger,
exact thing,
like in a personal relationship sense with my wife, and like not even her being angry at me. I had a problem with her expressing anger at all.
Right.
Like,
You had a problem with that being a trait that she expressed.
right.
Period.
Which is total bullshit. Because she's absolutely allowed to come home from the end of her day and be mad as fuck.
Yeah.
You know?
Just like literally anyone.
Literally anyone. And without, but it would upset me. Like it would get me all like triggered and all worked up for her to just express anger. And then I would feel the need to diminish her anger or redirect it or whatever. And then if that didn't work and it got out of hand, then I would get angry. Like,
Right.
no. I'm the fucking angry one. So much of my identity as a fucking young man was based around like, oh, well, Richard's the angry one. I mean, I don't know. When I look back on it,
It was an aspect. It was a pretty big aspect, but it was an aspect.
Thank you.
There was more to it. I'll grant you that much.
But I had this, when I look back on it, unflatteringly, I feel like I would take control of situations and I would monopolize decision making via my anger and whatnot and things like that. Like maybe I didn't do it as much as I feel like, but I certainly did it enough,
Or it could have been something, because I had a similar thing when I was like teenager, maybe early 20s even still, where I had someone remark to me one time, like, I don't know, we were picking like where to go out to eat or some shit like that. And we're like, how about here? Like, no. And I like turned it down. I was like, I don't want to go there. And they're like, well, how about here? I was like, no. And I was like, well, how about this place that I want to go to? And they were like, well, I don't want to go there. And then I got mad about that. And they were like, you just always have to have everything your way.
Mm-hmm.
And I've thought about that my entire life because I was really bad about that. And
Okay.
it's like a form of exerting control, right?
Sure.
Whether you deserve to be able to do that or not. And
Right.
it turns out people like us are typically much more able to get away with doing that.
Right.
You know?
Right. And
White dudes are really easily able to get away from doing that. With doing that.
Right. Because like I've gotten angry and like flipped my shit at work and I still had my job as an example.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, well, Richard's he's a passionate guy,
Yes.
so it's okay that he screamed down the hallway of the school or whatever, and
Yeah. Not a luxury afforded to a lot of people.
right. And so I,
More than likely.
it's the snake eating itself. So I get very, very mad whenever someone tries to sort of diminish the legitimacy of someone else's anger when they're reacting to their rights getting taken away, or they're reacting to someone who looks like them getting shot in their neighborhood by the police. And someone's like, well, this is just really the Democrats causing trouble. And it's like, no, like fuck politics. Like it's or like I didn't talk about, you know what I mean? Like these are,
Yeah. Well, it's difficult to tell where those reactions are coming from sometimes too, because sometimes it is just somebody with a legitimately shitty opinion, and sometimes it's back to the South Park thing where it's like, oh, when you have an opinion about this, this affects you somehow. Fuck that shit.
Yeah. Oh, well, gosh, what a coward. What a wuss.
Yeah.
What a,
And the reason I fixate on those two things is like those are such prevalent responses these days. Is people being obviously pieces of complete garbage, or I mean, I guess if you're reacting that other way, you still are. You're still garbage.
It's different. It's different.
Yeah.
Because. Like, I mean, there's what that, like, the subreddit, like, enlightened centrism, which just hits the nail on the head, with, like, the memes of that, like, both sides are the same, both sides are wrong, blah, 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 blah. Like, things in all that line, or whatever. And, like, South Park is an easy example to use because it was such a prevalent piece of media and very impressionable on people our age.
Yeah, and specifically what I'm talking about, what we've been talking about is like the idea that someone can't have a strong opinion, or it's not really affecting you. It can't be that big of a deal.
Right.
And that
right,
being like how you regard other people's feelings just generally.
you don't know any of these women that were sexually harassed by Louis C.K. How can you even actually care?
Or like that probably didn't even really happen.
Yeah. And like, because
that sort of thing.
when you know what I mean? And it's, yeah, it, and the thing, this is the other thing too, is that when you talk about these things and you put your ideas out there about this, you are implicitly saying this is the most important point to consider.
Right.
And so
It's
just you'll see where this will wrap up quick. This thought will wrap up quick. And so if you are a white dude and you have a disproportionate amount of opportunities to speak, and you have you're in a disproportionate amount of positions of power, and you're asked to speak, and and like a subject comes up and you're going to talk about it, and you put what you think is the most important thing about it, and if you're not like conscious about to say like, well, I'm not a trans person, I don't understand how this is affecting trans people. You're just going to take out the little sliver that you understand, and then that becomes amplified, and that becomes, and then other people talk about it, and then you know what I mean? And it's like, it just, because I don't know, man, it's white male privilege. I don't know. It's just, that's what it is.
I mean, it is. There's no denying that. Like it's literally the thing where, especially if you're talking, I guess it's talking anywhere these days, live or online or whatever, people will take whatever you say at absolute face value, and like you're saying, like it's the only thing you want to talk about, it's the only view that you have.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, you're expected to have to say, well, it's just my opinion here. I'm not speaking for everyone in front of every little thing.
Right.
But that it's people taking the most extreme possible read on what anyone is saying at any given time.
Sometimes, yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Especially online.
Sure.
And that's where you see a lot of that shit blow up, and useless back and forths come out like that. And
right.
There's absolutely zero subtlety or nuance.
Right.
Which is, nothing new. Anyone's, everyone knows this.
Right. And like sometimes I get real prickly with some of my my close friends, because it's like, they want to throw out like a hot take that rhymes with hot takes that other shitty people will throw out there without them,
like a George Lucas rhyme or like the actual rhyme,
like it metaphorically rhymes.
Okay,
like it's not
George Lucas rhyme.
What does that mean?
What he said. He said that about the dialogue in like episode 2 or some shit.
Okay,
he's like, it rhymes. It's poetry or some shit. Let's go. Keep going. Keep going.
I got nothing but love for George Lucas, man. Okay. But
they'll throw out a rhyming hot take.
Yeah, and I'll get real prickly because it hits me emotionally the same way that, and it's like, okay, well, if you're gonna critique this, I need you to say these other 5 things first.
Exactly.
So that I know where so that we can establish, we need to get on the same page about a few things. And I think, honestly, probably doing a callback to FD Signifiers videos, probably a reason why I am like so intense about some of that is because I got lost down the Rogan, Jordan Peterson rabbit hole for like a long time.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, like I'm get real, like,
because you can see how dangerous that can be.
Yeah. It's like, okay, that's fine if you want to critique Hillary Clinton, but why?
Yeah.
Like, I need to know some other things about you, before I will have a conversation, because there's lots of people who want to have conversations about why of why Hillary Clinton is bad, and it's because they think
Like
that she,
now, today, still.
yes, like are they like one because they think she eats babies or whatever. But then there's some people who are like, I legitimately disagree with her foreign policy, and I think the world would have been. I think that there would have been things that would have been absolutely worse had she been elected president. And they want to have like a subtle, like nuanced conversation regarding like all these nuances of government, and it's like maybe, it's like okay, that's. But I need to know these other things about where you stand. Like I need, you know what I mean? I need to know that there's not sexism. There's not like latent sexism in this. I need to know that there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All that sort of stuff.
I'm hung up on why the fuck are you talking about Hillary Clinton now, today? When you're online, I assume this is on Facebook or some shit. No?
We don't need to go into it.
Okay.
No, this
is it in real life?
Yes.
Okay. Damn, never mind. That blows out of the water what I was going to say.
Yeah. It's
weird.
This wasn't like a fight, okay? Like you know what I mean, that I like had with a friend or anything. Like it's fine. You know what I mean? Like this isn't like a severed friendship or anything.
No.
I'm just using an example because I'm real again, like I'm trying to like sort of be reflective of like,
okay.
Like why am I so like, okay, cool. You want to talk about like the bad things that Hillary Clinton did while she was, Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense or whatever. My mind's scrambled at the moment. Okay, can we say these other things first too, so I know that you're just not like some crazy sexist pig,
Sure.
And that you're not, like where are you coming from on this, and that's probably unreasonable on my part to need that before having a conversation about something, But that's where I'm at because I thought Jordan Peterson was just talking about like, Jungian interpretations of biblical stories and talking about like, ways to sort of be more productive and to have like better goals and like to make your bed and shit. And then like all of a sudden I'm like, well, trans people. And I'm like repeating these things about why trans people are like subhuman and confused and liberals and are snowflakes and blah blah blah. People can't, people want safe spaces, but the world isn't safe, and like, and I'm lost in all that bullshit.
Right.
Because I was a traumatized, damaged, lost young man that could. This is the thing. You know who else told me to clean my fucking room? My mother. Okay. You know who else told me to work out every day? Richard fucking Simmons. Okay. But if you get it in a package that's like a nasally fucking weird professor, or some bro ass like comedian, or whatever, now all of a sudden, like, oh, now it means something because these guys are masculine,
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that professor guy, he always speaks, oh my gosh, he's so collected. He's so,
But I mean, listen, like to ask that of someone, even you're conversing with face to face, if you don't know them reasonably well enough, that's something you're going to want to know.
Yeah.
On some level. And so I don't think I can knock you for that specifically. Like
if I gave you more details, you might.
Okay, maybe so. I'll let that example go then.
I appreciate you defending me though.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to say is like with the Peterson examples, like the transphobe shit, that's a very clear thing that he is just saying, right? But that's why that shit is so nefarious otherwise, because it's so, he may not even be saying something so directly or meaning something so directly, right, but it gets there eventually.
It gets in there, right? Yeah. And like that's the thing is like Jordan Peterson does say a lot of good things.
Exactly.
The things that he says good though are very common sense and are not unique.
Right.
Lots of people, it is like standard practice that if you want to regulate your mental health and your circadian rhythms, that you get up at the same time every day. That's not like unique insight from Jordan Peterson, but he knows that because he has a degree in psychology. He practiced as a clinical psychologist. He knows that.
Right.
So that's a good thing. He has some authority in that field.
Right. But it's a way into these other things.
But like,
and it's putting all this together.
Right. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Oh God, with Rogan in the sense that it's like, oh man, I started listening to this guy because, really because I was lonely and I was on like the cusp of adulthood and I wasn't able to have the same sort of social relationships with my friends anymore. I wasn't able to hang out with my friends in the same way. So listening to this guy hang out with his friends was a nice replacement for that.
Yes.
And
I got the exact same thing from podcasts otherwise.
Yes.
So I understand. Yeah.
And this is I'm talking like episode 30 of the Rogan podcast. Okay. Like I was in early. And whatnot. So
I loved him on news radio back in the day. I was a fan at some point.
Yeah, man. I liked his stand-up comedy, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but then, you know, but then at some point it stopped being just him hanging out with his buddies. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it becomes something different, and it allowed for me to take on some really toxic ideas. And I'm very lucky that I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm glad that I didn't have any like long-term damaging. I don't know, man. I don't exactly know how to parse it. I think I'm just really lucky that I was able to meet Allison when I did, and I was like, yeah, listen to this Rogan thing. She's like, oh, let's listen to it. And she's like, oh, that's cool. That's great. We should go see him live. You know, And it was before shit got wacky.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just really glad that he didn't get wacky, and then that like keep me and like me still be there. And she's like, oh, you listen to that fucker? Well, we're never gonna date.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad that.
Yeah.
Just the timing of it is really fortunate. Again, I'm very, very lucky in this. Even regarding Roe v. Wade, this overturning, I feel very lucky that I already have a wonderful, beautiful, amazing, super healthy 4-year-old son. Because if we were trying to build our family right now, or if we were a few years younger and we were trying to do that, or we were still trying to do IVF, we would have to greatly reconsider all that. Because now, if Allison had an ectopic pregnancy, then it's like, well, all right, well, your doctor has to like keep you in the hospital, wait for you to get to the brink of death before she can save you, or she'll be put in prison.
Right.
You know? Because sometimes pregnancies go sideways and it's no one's fault. And the procedure to handle that is the same as the procedure to get an abortion. Anyway.
Yeah.
So like, these things don't affect me personally in the same way, but they're going to affect other people. If you marry someone and you try to start a family, these things are going to affect you.
Exactly.
You know? And it's...
Exactly.
God, I'm just a fire hydrant of fucking bullshit right now.
Well, like you said, man, a lot of shit has happened lately.
God, it's so.
And that just dropped
yesterday.
Yesterday at this point.
We're not even talking about
this is Saturday.
About me getting COVID and like giving COVID to my family. We're not talking about my grandfather dying. We're not.
Yeah, fuck world policy. Like, in your personal life, the last 3 weeks have been madness.
We're not talking about like I have a doctor's appointment next week to deal with carpal tunnel because I have numbness. I'm a drummer. I'm a musician, and I am starting to have numbness in my hands. You know, yeah, like this is crazy times.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, otherwise, like, I've been watching the fucking January 6th hearings.
Yeah.
So live as they happen. That's been amazingly wild.
I have been really out of the loop on that because I just haven't had the bandwidth because I've been like digging under my house.
You've literally been under your house looking for pipes. Yeah,
yes,
totally. Yeah, I mean, that to say, I've been watching those, and it's been pretty wild, in the context of what's going on there. And what they're saying and the implications of all that. And even that is just like, fucking, yeah, of course, whatever. Look at all this other crazy shit that's going on. like, it's a time, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did see some really good concerts, so there was a good thing that happened. So might have been where I got COVID. I might have got COVID at the Origin show, but also might got it at the gym doing elliptical. People breathing all heavy and shit. I don't really know. Doesn't matter.
Who can say?
Yeah, we got through it. It was fine. One thing I will say about it, because public forum and platform or whatever, I don't want to give the impression that I'm flippant about anything. I decided to take more risks, knowing that because census was low in Allison's hospital,
Number of people with COVID.
Number of people. So even if, like, these are risks I would not have taken in January, right? Or last fall. Because knowing that, all right, if one of us does need hospitalization, or if Max does need hospitalization, there is care available.
Yeah.
And so after 2 years, I decided to take some risks. You know what I mean? And so, because there's a point that people missed a lot with the whole COVID discussion, which is one of the reasons to try to keep other people from getting sick is to not overburden the healthcare system.
How did anyone miss that?
I know. What
the fuck? Okay.
Because of freedom, Robert. Because of freedom.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
America.
Right. Because, and this is the thing too. My mother died because of this. My mother died not from COVID, but she died because of this. Because she got sick during the Delta surge.
Right.
And every step of her evaluation
was exacerbated
it
by
took longer.
that.
Everything took longer, and because it took longer to decide that it took longer for her to get checked in the ER. It took longer to decide that she needed to get her leg amputated. It took longer to schedule the amputation. And so then by the time that the amputation was happening, the procedure itself took longer because the infection had gotten worse and there was so much infected tissue. So she lost a lot of blood. And so then there wasn't a room available because she was supposed to go to this. But now, since she lost so much blood, she used to be on a special medication that they're only qualified to give in an ICU, not a regular floor. But there's no ICU room available because people are sick, unvaccinated there with COVID. So she has to wait in the PACU for 12 hours. And then she finally does get a room. And then she's there. And the second she stabilizes, they put her into another room because they need that bed for someone who's sick because they're unvaccinated and they have COVID. And then she is in another room and she crashes and she dies. Like, the shit has consequences. So yeah, I was pretty sure that wouldn't happen to me or Allison or Max because I knew hospital beds were available. So I went to some fucking concerts.
Yeah.
And
just to be clear, for anyone who doesn't realize, like, the notion was never, I'm not ever going to get COVID.
Right.
No one reasonable ever thought that.
Right.
I never thought that.
Right.
I haven't gotten COVID yet, but I will.
Right.
The vaccine isn't going to prevent me from ever getting COVID.
Right.
It was never the plan.
Right.
That's not how this shit works.
Right. And I was able to decide when me and my family were going to be at that heightened risk.
Yeah.
And we were able to make that decision together.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's extremely important.
So, people and the thing is, people would have understood if that was the point, if they would have listened to people who knew what they were talking about instead of listening to things that made them feel special.
Yeah. Or if people who had the platform to talk about it were saying coherent things.
Yeah.
Or all of the above, actually.
Yeah. Anyway, God damn. I don't know if this is useful to anyone. But maybe. I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm being, I don't know, man. Fuck it. I don't even care anymore. I'm being sincere. I'm being honest, and I'm trying to be reflective about things. And so,
well, listen,
maybe that has some value.
yeah, I'll say all of this was a bit rambly here, but I know that you were being sincere. I was being sincere as well. So I don't know. I'm not gonna try to stop this.
It is. This is also what
if you
happened.
tuned out 30 minutes ago, then fuck off. Like whatever.
Yeah. There's timestamps. You know what to do. And there's also, it's also sort of like, this is also what happens whenever we only talk whenever we do this.
Like I could have probably called you and we'd hash some shit out yesterday.
We could have done all this yesterday. Yeah. Like that'll.
Does that really fall under the heading of podcast planning?
Right.
Can we write that off somehow?
Yeah. It's like, you know,
Podcast
do your you need to do your like pre-purge, your personal pre-purge.
Nah, this is fine, I think.
I mean, yeah, because these are things that are like affecting lots of people. I'm not the only person whose parent died this past year. I can tell you like 5 people I personally know. Okay?
Like I haven't checked myself, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Like that's fucking wild. Okay.
Right.
You know, that's not normal. That's not, you know, that's not how things are supposed to be. You know, I was around a family the other day and it was like, you know, like a kid, you know, the son was about my age, just a few years younger than me, and his wife, and this motherfucker had both of his parents, and they were just all just walking around and doing stuff together. This guy,
how dare he?
This guy is in his mid to late 30s. It has two able-bodied parents.
Still together, I take it.
Yeah, still together. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's kind of weird to have both your parents dead before you're 40. That's not normal. Okay. Fair enough, guys. Fair enough. Makes me happy to be around y'all. Yeah, joke with each other some more. Let me bask in your residual love for each other. Bicker a little. Bicker! Bicker! Let me live vicariously through you.
I need this. Yeah, fuck, man.
Fucking wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I bet.
So, anyway, do you want to talk about any more bullshit, or do you say anything else?
I don't know. I don't know that I have the wherewithal to talk about anything else right now other than what we have planned, because I have notes for it. So
all right, get back on the train. Okay.
I suspect we'll talk about that more soon.
Yeah.
In all various aspects of all the
yeah,
stuff.
or yeah, I don't know.
What about you?
Oh yeah, man, I'm dude, this is just jazz. I'm just whatever.
Yeah.
But okay, so the topic for today.
Oh, you know what bullshit I will bring up?
Yeah, please.
I was talking a couple of episodes ago about like looking at different DAWs.
Yeah.
Bring this DAW shit back around.
Let's get boring.
Right?
Yes,
yeah,
please.
let's go. Let's do this. And so I picked up FL Studio.
Oh, Fruity Loops.
A couple weeks ago. Yeah. And that was cool. And
do they like not call it Fruity Loops? They're like, we've expanded our brand. We are.
It doesn't
FL
say that
Studio.
on the website that I could see anywhere.
Okay.
So it was like intelpro.com or some shit is where the receipt comes from. I don't fucking know. Anyway, I picked that up and I've been learning that.
Okay.
And because I have a couple of like electronic songs and I've like recreated them in that and trying to figure it all out. Watching a lot of tutorials, finally learning about waveforms and how all that shit is actually meant to be interpreted orally.
Okay.
You know, because like I know what a waveform is and why it happens the way that it does.
Okay.
But like, I don't know how to translate that shit to musicality. You know?
What do you mean?
If you tell me you're gonna do a square wave, I don't know what that means. I don't know what I expect to hear from
like,
that.
You're talking
about
like
what I mean?
Synthesizing sounds and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you now.
Yeah. Sounds, audio signals.
Right. Okay.
And so I've just been like learning the ins and outs of that and what a synth is doing
Yeah.
and that's been really fun to do. And I have an analog synth on the way.
Oh yeah, what'd you get?
It's a Donner. I think it's a
Okay.
company out of somewhere in China, maybe Hong Kong, I forget.
Okay.
But it was like super cheap and it sounds really good. So it's like that seems like a really cool. I kind of stopped right there because then I went from there to watch reviews of like this MIDI controller. I was like, oh, this was really cool. It's got like 16 channels. It's like $500. Let's not.
Dude,
Maybe when I need it eventually, we'll come back around to that. But I don't need that now.
That synth rabbit hole's a legit rabbit hole.
Yeah. So I have the one synth on the way, and that's where I stopped. I was like, you know what? I think I have enough now to get started.
Yeah.
And we'll go from here.
Yeah.
But
smart.
But that's been really fun to start learning, and it's a whole fucking rabbit hole to go down.
So yeah. So what's that process like of taking those? Because you had made some of those songs as like through like an internet program, right?
Yeah,
like the chip tunes, like the 8-bit tunes or whatever, right?
Yeah, so it's like a web app. It's like a web-based step sequencer.
Okay.
Is basically what it is.
Okay.
And it just saves your progress like in the URL. It has a bunch of characters after that, and that's your save file basically.
So how was it? Did you have to rebuild those from scratch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's no. You probably could port it over somehow or another.
Like with some MIDI.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe
way.
something like that.
Okay.
But I wasn't gonna go that route.
What was that? Did you find what was that like? I guess that's sort of like because that's almost
You're
also,
reimagining it. You're totally
right. That's not just re-recording. That's like recomposing.
Yeah. Well, kind of in a way because I already have the basic framework of at least the rhythm of things.
Okay.
And if you want to tweak that, you can obviously do whatever the fuck you want. But it's more about the tones and the textures and
right.
Yeah.
Right. How was it? Was it difficult for you to find like sort of complementary tones?
Oh yeah, I've got 2 tracks fully done, and I'm not happy with either of them yet. Like I basically there's a huge tone library. Like I got like tier 2 of 4 of FL Studio.
Okay.
Basically, and it comes with like a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It came with what I felt like was enough. But you can go get note packs, sound fonts, whatever the fuck you want to call them.
Yeah.
There's just a billion of them, and in one given synth plugin, it has just a billion sound things that you go through and go, nope,
Yeah.
nope. Maybe favorite that one, nope. For you can do that for hours. You can do that for days.
Yeah, for real.
And by the end of 2 hours, you've lost track of what you thought the first one sounded like. So you really can't sit down and do this forever,
Yeah.
You got to keep coming back to it. So what I've done is like I got good enough ones to where I was like, that's probably fine, and just did the whole track. Came back to it the next day. I was like, this fucking sounds like shit. Let's go find other sounds for this.
And so you're able to just change the sound.
Yep.
Without like
you can literally you pick the source for what you want. You compose the notes on the step sequencer or MIDI controller if you're using that. Whatever. I don't have one, so I'm just using the piano roll. You just click the notes, how long you want them, how you want them to act in terms of like velocity or volume, anything like that.
Yeah.
Add effects to it and all that stuff. Pick the notes, you pick the source, and you can change that source whenever you want. You just drag and drop a new sound in there. And they make it super, super easy. And it's
Legit.
It's fucking cool.
That's awesome.
It's really fun.
I'm excited.
I'm super newbie, not knowing what the hell I'm doing yet, but it's fun to stumble through, and there's a lot of stuff in there.
I'm really excited that you're doing all that. So,
yeah,
because I really enjoyed when you showed me those chip tunes. I was like, that shit's awesome. So
cool.
I like the thought of there being like a souped up version of it. I like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I like the thought of the Robert Rabel IDM intelligent dance music record.
Please. Influential dance music.
Influential.
We don't beat our chests around.
Iridescent.
But it's funny because in that vein, like one of the tracks, like they kind of all by necessity where I made them at had to be of a certain quality. Like they all kind of sounded like chip tunes basically because that's what was on offer there.
Okay.
Instrument wise. But now I see.
Over
here, there's like you can just imitate an acoustic guitar if you want to.
Right.
So one of the tracks I have, instead of like 8-bit sounds, I now have like a Wurlitzer and some other kind of organ, and I'm like, that sounds kind of cool doing so reimagining all this shit as I go and see what works and what doesn't.
Right. Because I can imagine there's lots of, motifs and expressions of motifs and articulations that sound really good in an 8-bit scenario that just aren't going to translate as well. And I guess unless
or vice versa, really.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's not like a, you know what I mean?
Nothing is that way because it has to be that way. It just might sound good that way.
Right. Like this is sort of the same thing. Allison was listening. What is it? Dear Evan Hansen.
Dear Evan Hansen.
Okay. So.
Was she listening to the Broadway production soundtrack or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And she was like, why do these, she like play this song because she watched the movie. She was like, well, let's watch this together. And then we started watching. I was like, this is not for me.
Agreed.
Watch this on your own and you can tell me about it if you want, but this, I'm not going to.
I watched a review of it that was longer than the actual movie that I got way more out of. So that's where I'm at with that.
I like seeing musicals in person.
Yeah, me too.
But
sometimes
I have a hard time with like live action musical films. You know what I mean? I don't
like what Hamilton was.
Hamilton was fine,
but like that sort of style.
Well, what I mean is like, hey, this is a drama, this is a movie, we're shooting like a movie, and now everyone's singing and dancing.
Oh, sure.
That I don't vibe with.
I agree with that, actually, exactly.
No. I was actually lucky enough to see Hamilton in person. It was amazing.
Oh, cool.
It's one of like the most incredible, one of the most impressive pieces of art I've ever been privy to. Mm-hmm. And then the thing on Disney Plus is fine.
Oh, it's on Disney Plus now?
I think so.
Okay.
But it's nothing replicates because there's so much information in a musical that is conveyed through just the ambiance of the theater, through the costume, through the set design, through the body language. There's so much that isn't the sound itself that is being conveyed. And so there's just a different level of emotional intensity that you're never going to experience if you're not experiencing it in the room.
Right.
And, but so she played me one of the, she's like, why do the drums on this sound bad to me? Like, why is this not working? Why is this bugging me? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I listened to it and I was like, oh, okay. Well, I think it's for reasons X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. I'm not trying to shit on anything, so I'm not gonna like give you the snarky thing, all the snarky things, or whatever. I'm not gonna
because it's theater and it sucks or whatever.
No, right. So I sound like the drummer is whatever. There's a lot of things that go in. It's very difficult to do that job and do it well or whatever.
Yeah.
What I think the biggest thing was to relate it to what you were saying is that on that first initial impression, like the instrumentation was like very front forward, expressive vocals. And then big acoustic piano chords and all that sort of stuff. And then when you're trying to sort of like interject like kind of like pop punk-ish drumming, but like interspersed throughout, like not using the drums as timekeeping, but using the drums as accent, but you're going to use the language of like pop punk drumming. Okay. There's no distorted guitars and distorted bass. So whenever you like come in with a you know what I mean? When you come in with that and it's just there for 3 measures to accent a vocal line and then it's out, it's going to sound really, really weird. It's going to sound, it's going to hit you funny if you're familiar with the language of that genre, which Allison is, because she grew up loving bands like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, why is this hitting me funny? But just to sort of piggyback on what you're saying about like, instrumentation matters. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't like just take like, oh, well, let's just take all the notes that were played and put them on, you know, different, like, even if it's the same exact notes, right? You have different timbres. And so
Yeah, or even if you find individual instruments for each one of those lines that you go, oh, this one sounds good playing this. Oh, this one sounds good playing this. Oh, this one sounds good playing this. And then you play them all at the same time, and they just sound like complete discordant garbage.
right.
Yeah, who knows?
Right. I was really fascinated when I was playing at a church, and the guy who was leading, he was primarily like a choir, like a classically trained vocalist, and so he was more in the like classical pianist was more of his language, but he knew he was very good at like improvising and all that sort of stuff as well. But because that was his bass, he would play these like really giant chords on the keys. You know what I mean? Like he's hitting the 1-3-5, the next octave of the 1-3-5, and so like you're getting all of it. You're getting all those notes, right? And so my friend who was a guitar player, it was really tricky for him to accompany him as a guitarist at first, because he's like, okay, well,
there wasn't like a sonic place for him to live.
Yeah,
in there.
Right. So you know, but because he's a masterful guitarist, he was able to sort of like, okay, well, I'm going to use these type of inversions. Let me find if we're doing like a C chord, let me find the C and the E and the G, or let me do the E and the G that he's not playing.
Right.
Okay, that sits nice. Let me, you know, and because that's a world I don't understand very well. But
I don't either. I just know what it is, not how to navigate it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was like, man, that's like so fascinating and so interesting and so cool.
Yeah. But those are the kind of decisions I'm now having to like make, and it's sometimes like unexpectedly so, because if I find some instruments that I do like together, and then play the track, and some of the things that I expect, some of the things that worked by virtue of like chance or accident in the first place, just the way that two waves sort of bounced off or past each other or whatever, they don't work here anymore with the way that these things sound. I've got to like figure that out or rework it or find different instruments or whatever, write a new part.
Right. Yeah, like in that's like a whole thing, man. And you know, and like talking to people, you know, and like, I mean, and then you go in the next step, which is like mixing.
Right. So yeah, that'll come later. I don't know anything about that yet.
And like, you know, carving EQ or whatever. And it's like, all right. Cause that's how I fucked up the Buff Wayne record, was because I tried to do two things at the same time, which is very stupid to do, which was I tried to have like really trebly, like audible, articulate like bass guitar,
right,
and like really defined bass drum without it being triggered. So who the fuck's carrying the low end, Richard? If you don't want the bass guitar hanging out, you know, at like 60 hertz or and below, or you know what I mean, or like carrying that, well, then you need to have the bass drum do it. Oh, you don't want the bass drum doing it either? Well, I guess you just have a weak sounding recording. You know, is this what you want? You know,
clearly. I was just listening to one of those songs yesterday.
Oh yeah, how'd it hit you?
It's all right. It didn't sound great, but I mean, I don't know. I started playing Tracy on guitar. I was like, I remember this song. Yeah, that was a fun song to play.
Dude, they were all real fun to play.
They were.
Yeah. So that was. Man. Yeah.
We'll have to have Jaime on one of these days to talk about that.
Yeah, and I'll feel like I'll have to. I was like, yeah, I apologize for you know, like taking someone as talented as you and like just making you be in a band that wasn't doing anything for 2 years.
Well,
you know, I mean,
we can share that blame.
Yeah. Well, you had like a fucking hernia that you were waiting to get surgery for.
All right, but that was like once.
It felt like that was like a really, really long.
I did have it for a long time before I actually got it taken care of. I guess that's true.
Yeah, like it felt like that was a, you know, that yeah.
Yeah, that was a time.
That was a time. Yeah,
That was a time.
it's just a weird time, but it was a interesting. That the process, I learned a lot from that process of making the record, and the way that I paid that forward is like, okay, well, I need to, because this is a really difficult thing to sort of navigate this whenever when you have a forceful, passionate personality.
We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so whenever you're able to do this, like, okay, it's time to do shit. Let's get shit done. Bow.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, sometimes you're able to do that because you don't listen to people. Because you know, you know, you ignore advice that's like, I don't think you can do that.
Like physically.
Right. I don't think you can sing and play drums at the same time. Fucking watch me. You know, and then if, you know, and if you get a few wins by like not listening to people and following your gut and following your intuition and following your instinct, you know, then you start to think that like other people don't know what they're talking about. Right. And other people just don't get it.
Right.
And if they're not able to explain it to you in a way you understand, then you end up forcing someone to mix a record in a stupid way. So
just hypothetically.
So I learned a lot from that.
Well, at least there's that.
At least there's that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that's all the bullshit that I had to talk about.
That's all. So we're out of bullshit.
I'm out of bullshit for now.
Okay, man. So that's a lot. That was a lot of bullshit. We were backed up.
Ugh.
Backed up on the bullshit.
Well, plus we got a lot of bullshit to go. So.
Oh, dude, that's so mean.
Well, that's not. No, it depends on what you think I'm talking about.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so the thing we did we covered machine heads. So all right. Make it easier for me to find where the shit is.
Fair.
So you know, we're doing like a machine head series because it's
about a month or so ago. It was Machine Head. And
oh yeah. Well, I had the idea to do that like in November, and then like CJ canceled like 7 times, and you know, and then I got COVID, and then my grandpa died, and then we finally got CJ in here. He was so kind of as he came in here, had me film the back of his head. And,
again, lesson learned.
Lesson learned.
Now we know what to do there.
And so yeah, the original idea was like, yeah, we'll release the Machine Head episodes in May. We'll call it Machine Head.
Yeah. We can do all the albums and we can divide them up like this, and there'll be enough shows for a month. Machine Head.
No.
End of June. Part 2. Let's go.
Right.
So,
but so the 2 records. So the hot take title was like, you know, The Burning Red, Supercharger, and What Killed Nu Metal.
Yeah.
Was like the hot take title that I texted you for it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so those are the records we're going to talk about. And
I don't know about, I mean, we'll get into it, but I don't know about you, or I don't know how you intended that title to be taken in the first place. But I certainly, as I thought about it and thought about what I wanted to think about and talk about with that, I certainly took it to be, for me, what killed nu metal for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
so that's where I'm coming at this from.
Cool.
Primarily.
For me, I think it is.
Although in doing research, I see other avenues to talk about as well.
Right. So, for me, I think that it is. There's a very interesting thing. Yeah, let's just talk about nu metal a little bit in general. We'll start there. And to me, well, and Machine Head is a very interesting band to talk about all of this with, because they straddle sort of 3 very different climates in metal.
Yeah.
You know, they had like, if it ain't Pantera, it sucks. You know, like thrash is done, Pantera's where it's at. Like they found a place in that.
Yeah.
You know, and then like they're situated in the middle of this new metal thing, and then they find a place in the, you know, new wave of American heavy metal.
Yeah.
And have a career, and, you know, and have a complete resurgence of their career that they're still riding that wave of.
Right.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And what an incredible, like that, fucking wow.
That's pretty amazing.
It's fucking wow, right?
Totally.
So they're such a unique band in the time that they exist and the different eras they exist. So they're just such a great band to like examine this question of what is new metal, what was special about it, when was it relevant, when was it not relevant, and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And so to me, something that's very important to talk about with new metal is that it is almost, that title is almost retconned to just cover music that was popular during a certain time period, because we didn't say we were listening to new metal. Whereas if you were listening to Suffocation in 1991 and Death and Obituary and whatever, you're like, I like death metal.
As opposed to new metal, those were like labels of their time.
It was a label that the subculture itself had adopted for itself.
Yeah.
Right. Or if in the like early to mid 2000s and you liked, if you liked As I Lay Dying and Every Time I Die and, you know, and 18 Visions and all that or whatever and blah, 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 you're like, I like metalcore.
Right. Right.
We never said I like new metal. We didn't.
Yeah, I guess I just don't remember. I assume we just said we just like metal.
I
guess I don't know when that label came along, really.
And I think there were probably like journalists from pretty soon that were using it.
Because I feel like it couldn't have been that long after that.
Right, but it wasn't a thing that we adopted, right? It wasn't like a unified scene, right? And so
I agree. Yeah, I don't think so.
And so often, like Slipknot, for example, is like, I saw someone say it in like the best way that I've seen, that like Slipknot is retconned into the new metal genre just because they were popular during that time period.
Yeah.
But they're not really a new metal band or whatever.
Yeah. I think part of the reason for that, especially going over these lists of, I sort of just looked at all the years and what came out, sort of like you mentioned. I was like, that's a good way to go about that. This whole, the whole new metal craze, regardless of who you lump into that or not, what the new metal craze actually was, it was really a very short but like powerful burst.
It really was. It really was. It was sort of like this really tiny window where it was something to sort of, it was almost like this weird little just placeholder while everyone figured out what the fuck was going to happen with aggressive music after grunge.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what are we going to do now? And so the bigger bands that had some sort of success, you know, like before or during 94 or 95, right? So like Machine, you know, our Rage Against the Machine, right? You know, it's like, well, I guess we'll do that, you know, and or Korn and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's so wild, you know, like the bands that are, because this is the thing too that I feel like is often the phrase new metal doesn't tell you anything about how it sounds.
Not at all. Not even close. You know, at the time, I think it was just rap metal. I think that was what most people referred to a lot of it as.
An aspect of it.
Yes, it is. But I'm talking about, what did we call it at the time? And I think by and large, people just said rap metal.
Sure.
from what I remember.
There's a lot
sort of.
right, but there's a lot of stuff that doesn't neatly fit into that
No,
whatsoever.
Not at all. Not at all.
That was still like
Yeah.
considered nu metal and whatnot. Because the thing too that I sort of was thinking about is that I think nu metal fundamentally, it's a fusion genre.
Yeah.
Because that was like always what it was. You know, there was
just that label was taken already.
Right. Like the essential elements were distorted guitar, heavy grooves of some type, and prominent vocals. Right, like you were gonna have like verses and choruses, and you were gonna have vocal hooks, shit that people could sing along to or whatever.
Yeah.
But then there was always gonna be like some other weird factor. Like there was like, oh, dude, well, this band does all that, but they do salsa. You're talking about Poya. Oh, well, this one does techno. Oh, it's Static X. You know. Oh, this one this one has like multiple vocals. Has a soulful lead. Oh, Simon Seven Dust. You know, like there was, you know.
Yeah.
These guys have, you know, like there was always like sort of not like a gimmick, but maybe kind of a gimmick. I don't know.
Kind of a gimmick. I'm gonna say kind of a gimmick.
But there was always like some, you know, and I think that coming up in that time, the way that it felt, I mean, I don't know. It was kind of, I felt like it felt like we had the freedom to be really creative and incorporate whatever we want. It didn't feel like we had to, it didn't feel like when we were writing, there was anything that was off the table.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And so, whereas, in bands that I was in after that, like in the mid 2000s that were maybe younger than us, it was like, this is what we do. Like we stay in this lane, you know, we are this kind of metal band, or, you know, whereas we grew up in the nu metal paradigm, which was like, oh man, just take the stuff you like and throw it all together and find a way to make it work.
Yeah. I think you're not wrong there.
You know?
Yeah. I feel like there's something there to say. I don't really know what it is yet, but I feel like there's something there to say about how a lot of the major players in this scene did have some sort of a thing that they did, whether it was gimmick or just an interesting nuance of what that band did. But that meant that a lot of the bands that were in that scene or tried to join that scene or came up around the same time inexplicably or, you know, unfortunately simultaneously, if they didn't have something, they just kind of got lost. And that happened a lot.
Yeah. Well, and so a lot of these bands were on what record label? Roadrunner. And I have heard like Monty Connor interviews, and he was talking about, you know, in the early days when they signed like Obituary and, you know, and they had Sepultura and all this sort of stuff. And he was in, you know, like that there always had to be, like not a gimmick, but gimmick sounds too derogatory, but like a pitch, right? Like, how do I describe this band and what makes it unique in like a sentence, right? Oh, Sepultura, Brazilian metal band.
Right. Every country gets one. This is Brazil's.
This is Brazil's, right?
System of a Down comes along. There are Armenias. That's
right.
That's
the one. You know? That's the one you get. I think he was talking about Obituary too, and like it was like, okay, well, this music's great, this music's amazing, but what's the gimmick? Like, what's the pitch?
Right.
And like, so the way that they sold it was like, oh yeah, the singer isn't even saying words. Like something like dumb like that. You know, it's like, oh, there aren't even lyrics. You know, his vocals are so crazy and so intense. It's just
they're subsonic, man. You can't even tell.
Yeah, like something dumb like that, you know. But just so that there was and like you can't tell me that he didn't like look at Call Chamber or Il Nino or whoever and be like, oh, okay, this is you know, oh, y'all are like, this is the nu metal band that has songs in Spanish. Ha! You know, this is the nu metal band that doesn't have any clean vocals, you know, or whatever. No singing. This is the nu metal band with only singing.
Only singing, yeah.
this is the new metal band that has a separate clean singer and then another singer that only raps and then
Right, yeah, okay, yeah.
but then the drummer does gutturals, you know what I mean? Like whatever. Like there was always some.
See, I hadn't considered that. I hadn't considered all those branches on that tree. That's a really good point. And any band that just had this singer in this band does 60% of the clean vocals, and the other singer does 40%. That's all you got? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, get out of here. What do you mean? You just have two actual singers?
Yeah.
Oh, it's confusing.
Neither of you does an extreme amount of either thing? No. Pass.
Right. Like, everything had to be like pitchable,
That's so weird. But I think, yeah, there's
something to that, right?
You can kind of pick that pattern out with a lot of stuff, yeah.
Let's see. Okay. I didn't think that we were gonna do this in this way, so my notes are a little out of order.
I mean, we can go back to Machine Head first if you want. I didn't have a plan. That's my secret.
Yeah.
I'm always unprepared.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about these Machine Head records because I feel like if I do too much of the new metal stuff, it's going to diminish. It's going to diminish the records themselves.
Okay.
And I don't want to do that. And Supercharger is really the perfect record to discuss why the fuck what happened to new metal. It's the perfect record to discuss that. So, all right. So Burning Red.
1999's Burning Red.
Right. So now, did you have any relationship with this record when it came out, growing up, or anything?
I don't remember when I got it at some point, like pretty soon after it came out.
Okay.
I had it at some point.
Because you went to the Roadrunner website and you listened to the sample of Exhale the Vial and you were like, okay.
No.
Oh, God damn it.
No, I went to the Roadrunner website and listened to, it was either I Defy or it was From This Day. One of the two.
Oh, okay.
Were up there. And that was how I found that. That was how I found that the new album was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
But also, there was, I want to say, the sampler CD that came with Risk, Megadeth's Risk, maybe?
Okay.
What year was that? That's on here.
Is it?
It was 99.
Okay.
It's in my notes.
In your notes. Yeah. Fair enough.
It's
Jolly good.
on here. Yeah. It's in my notes.
This is exciting.
I think it was that sampler CD. That was a big thing that happened a lot around that time, was they would pack a sampler CD with some other shit, and you just got to discover cool things.
Fucking brilliant.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
And on that one I'm thinking about, there were like 25 tracks, all from different bands. I was like, whoa, cool, man. So I want to say it was on there. But one of those two ways I found out about it, and shortly thereafter I bought the album, probably through Columbia House or BMG. So probably I didn't pay for it.
One of the rare instances where it's okay to have a CD that goes all the way to 70 minutes.
Yeah, right.
That is not always okay, guys.
True. So yes, I did own this roughly around the time that it was new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And similar for you, I think.
Oh, yeah. I bought it. I don't think I bought it like the day that it came out, but I was like, oh, it's a new Machine Head. Gotta get that. Because, man, do I love the More Things Change. And that was another thing that was like interesting about the time is like, I didn't listen to this and feel like, oh God, they've strayed from their roots. They this, they that, they blah, blah, blah. Cause I'm so young. I'm still sort of taking things just as they are. The first verse in Desire to Fire did catch me off guard.
Mm-hmm.
Like how rappy it is.
Okay.
But I didn't think it was bad. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah, because to me, like, having so recently listened to that album a few times and then coming to this one, like, that doesn't feel like a huge departure.
It's not.
Or anything.
It doesn't. And
there are things about it, and there are things about the next album that feel way more like a big departure. But yeah, from here, Burning Red, it's still a Machine Head album.
Right. And so this is actually like one of my like, it's one of my favorite albums to like just listen to.
I can see that, actually.
It's great. So here's some of the things I love about it. Okay, so the lyrics are a really nice blend between like the posy metal, hate breed, like don't give up vibes,
yeah.
and hopeless depression.
Really two sides of the same coin there.
And I vibe with that. And that kind of becomes an aspect, like that kind of becomes like the Machine Head formula for like 60% of their songs. Of like, yeah, I want to fucking die, but don't give in. Don't give up.
All things in moderation.
But without like going like too like posy metal and too, like
not like
get up on time, do your homework, dog.
Yeah.
Be nice to your mom. Like like it doesn't go too hard.
Not hopelessly like unrealistically preachy about it or whatever.
Right, but it's like keep your head up,
Yeah.
and shit like
that. Be
that.
Cool. Don't suck,
And
but don't like
Right. So I love the vocals. I love everything about the vocals on this record. I love how feels like the record where like Robb really starts to lean into melody, which will become such an essential part of like the Machine Head sound later.
Yes.
Which is not really present on the first two records.
Right.
It's hinted at, but it's not really developed. Here it starts to really develop.
There are parts, but like a lot of these songs sort of ride on the vocal melodies.
Yes.
Because there's really not a lot of other melody on this album.
Right.
Is something I've really noticed.
Right. And I love the lyrics overall. They're much more personal than on the previous records. So like the previous records were a little more like fuck you fuck with me, fuck you, blah blah blah, or they were like a fucked up situation about something or whatever. This record and the next one kind of goes back to that in some ways or whatever, but this one is very
superficially,
yeah. This one feels very very personal, and I vibe with that. There's a special feel to this record, like rhythmically and how things are phrased. There's like a little swing to it, which is really, really unique for this kind of record at this time period. Because there's a lot of grooves that they do a lot of the kind of grooves that a lot of new metal bands were doing around this time, but none of them do them as well as Machine Head did them on this record. And it's because they have like a little swing in their subdivisions like that, like, it's because Dave McClain is such a goddamn amazing next level fucking drummer. And because Dave McClain is a little older than all of us. And so he's one of those older guys like Gene Hoglan that learned to play drums before double bass was a thing. Right? Like Vinnie Paul, Dave McClain, Gene Hoglan, man, like there's not a lot of guys that are really from that school of, I grew up playing along to Tommy Aldridge and shit like that. And then thrash happened after I was already playing the drums. So I had to get another bass drum.
Right. Right. Or at least another pedal.
There's not a lot of, you did not want to have a fucking double pedal in the fucking, those things sucked.
Fair point.
They didn't make good double pedals until like fucking 1998.
Okay. Fair enough. Had to have the whole other drum.
But so yeah, that's something I think is really, really special about this record is like the feel of it, because the grooves just sit and just such a fucking unique pocket, man. It's really, 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 really awesome. I think maybe from this day might be the best example.
Yeah.
Of that.
Okay.
Like the verses and how they're doing that, like gum, gum.
That was the chorus. Yeah.
Right, like that, like kind of.
Yeah.
And like and then but then the verse that like but like exactly where they're putting those rhythm guitar accents, it's not like if you were to do a grid, it's not perfectly lined up. Like there's a little
Yeah.
There's a little tiny swing to it. And
definitely. Yeah.
And so,
Now that I think about that, totally.
and I think that's another reason why this album just like, I'm like, yeah, just fucking put that thing on repeat, man. I could just fucking listen to it over and over and over again.
Well, when you said that, it kind of hit me because I listened to it a few times earlier again, and I guess what overall about this album, like there are very few things about it that like reach out and grab me like the first two albums, but like overall it like goes down real smooth.
Yeah,
and it is like it is really swingy now that I think a lot more about that. But overall, it's just good and solid.
Yeah,
just kind of all the way through.
Yeah. I only have one real. There's other things that I like about it. There's other things that I think are just sort of like observations, kind of like you were saying. Like I think this album has great songs, and great grooves, great melodies, great lyrics. But I don't think there's a lot of great riffs.
There's almost none.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. There's almost none.
Yeah.
This isn't exactly like a riffy record, but I don't think it was trying to be. So that can't really like fault it.
Yeah.
On that, you know.
I mean, on some level, like it's all the more impressive that it's still a cool album to listen to.
Right. Like there's some guitar hooks, but they're not like riffs.
Yeah. And there's some cool rhythmic stuff, like you were saying, like in a number of the songs. And specifically, I wrote the first verse in Devil of the King's Card. However, I can't recall it at this moment, but I made the note to say, like, what's going on rhythmically in that verse and, like, the note that they're chugging on is a strange note to be holding on. Okay. And it produces, like, a weird feel. You going to pull it up?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
Good.
Play it away from the mic so I don't have to deal with
so it comes in with the chorus. It starts with the chorus, and then it hits the first verse afterwards.
You're talking about Devils with the King's Card?
Yeah.
Okay. This is
this whole rhythmic thing here, and then the note they're hitting.
Okay.
That's kind of it's the but they're hitting like a high, like they're playing on like the 8th fret or some shit.
I see what you're saying.
It's like way high up.
I see what you're saying.
It's just a weird place to sit.
Yeah.
But the rhythmic stuff is really cool, and it's like a really just kind of
right.
I don't know. There's something about it that it doesn't seem. It's not very typical, I guess. But it's interesting.
Exactly, but it really, really works. And I really have to wonder how much of this is the dynamic that Aru Luster brought to the band.
Yeah.
Because they lost Logan or he whatever. But they have a new guitarist, and like I wonder if some of the unique things that I love about this record is Robb and Aru and Adam and Dave being excited to work together.
Yeah.
And that chemistry being good. And because I think that like there started to be creative tension that happened between them, maybe pretty quickly is like sort of the impression that I got, or maybe quickly, or maybe during Supercharger, or quickly after. Like Aru wanted to go way more poppy, was my understanding. You know,
so he was on Supercharger. I did not look at that.
He was on both of them.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
And so, but on this one, it feels like it's just like a perfect. I don't know, man. It works.
It does.
It works.
Yeah.
There's a great vibe on this record. There's definitely a vibe, and it's super, super solid.
Yeah.
It's consistent, and that's the other thing too. I was gonna say about like the swinging. You know what I mean? Because this is the thing is like you get a lot of like nu metal records out around this time that are. Some of them have like a unique feel to them, because like the band's like. Because the band's a little sloppy and they're like barely holding on, you know what I mean?
A unique feel is a nice way of saying you guys aren't very tight. Kind of suck.
Well, and I guess like, but okay, like we'll think about this. Like, All Severed, we were pretty tight, but we were not like, because y'all just knew when I was gonna deviate.
We were tight within the context of the changes, but not necessarily within the context of our individual parts.
Right. We weren't like consistent.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and so it's like, oh, well, we rush that part and we drag that part and we do this part. And like we the way that we hit that rhythm isn't exactly subdivided, but that's the way that we do it. And we know that's the way that we do it. So it's tight.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But and that's the thing. But on this Machine Head record, like that thing that they're doing on those grooves that make them sit, it is perfectly consistent. Like because that's the thing, right? Like you can be unique and weird, and but you have to be consistent, right? Otherwise, it's just sloppy.
Right.
Like you can't like rush a little bit, then drag a little bit, then swing a little bit, then not swing a little bit. Then that's just sloppy.
It has to be intentional. Like you can make it sound organic, but it has to be something that you know that you're doing.
Right. And that it does. And when we say intentional, that doesn't mean you have to be able to articulate it with you and like say exactly what you're doing.
It doesn't have to be orchestrated and like plotted out beforehand. But
right,
the band.
We're gonna be behind the beat. We're gonna be no, it doesn't have to be. But it just has to be like this is how we want it to sound, and we're gonna make it sound this way every time, right?
Yeah.
But let's see. No other general impressions. The production choice is interesting. I'm not really sure what to call it. It's not bad, but it's very different than like Burn My Eyes.
In what way specifically?
The production?
Yeah.
Like just the tones, the sounds, the mix.
Okay, just overall, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, it's extreme. Where like that was like this like tight, massive, like brr. And this is like a lot more organic, a lot more sort of like the sound is a lot more, I don't know how to say it, like rounder.
That's exactly what I was going to say. There's a lot more in the way of there's a lot more in the way of effects going on the guitars for one thing.
Sure, yeah.
Like there's a lot of like there's like a lot more. This may have been the first time that they started using a whole lot of chorus on some of the guitars. I'd have to go back and listen to the first two really, but it definitely stands out a lot more on this one, where it's like, and that makes everything have that more rounded off feeling.
Right, and just like the bass drum sound, like the tones of the drums, how everything sits in the mix, it's a lot more like, I mean, it's mixed, I guess, kind of closer to a sort of almost like a pop record in a sense. Pop isn't the right, or like a punk record where it's like, all right, the vocals are cutting through, and then the music, all of the music kind of blends together to be this one thing. Whereas on Burn My Eyes, it's like, those are the drums, and those are in your face and amazing, and that's the guitar, and that's in your face and amazing. Yeah. And
the guitar's like cut through, the drums are just like super solid, like slabs, Right. Yeah, and that's not on this album.
Right. It's like not bad. It's just it's different, and I think that's interesting. It's clearly an intentional choice.
Yeah, I mean, to the point about how they sort of wrote this album a bit differently, like how there aren't these big in-your-face riffs all the time. Maybe they felt like they didn't need to do that, or they just wanted to, because a lot of these are the guitars in these songs. A lot of the time are just providing like a scaffolding,
right,
for either the rhythmic, interesting stuff that's going on, or more often the vocal melodies.
Right. And that is sort of another thing that is interesting about Robb Flynn, Dave McClain, Adam Duce, and we talked about this, especially with Robb Flynn, is like, Robb Flynn is coming out of like a legit thrash metal pedigree.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's already toured with Violets, he has that depth of riffage, right? He's not playing dug-a-dun, 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 because that's all he can play.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? Like he at this point in time, he has a right hand to match James Hetfield's, okay? Like he can do all that shit right now. And he's choosing dug-a-dun, 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 Right. And so that's something that I think is like really, again, another thing why Machine Head is really fascinating to consider during all this, is because things come back around to being a more like traditional metal thing, and that being like, oh, well, that's what metal is, and this is what metal is going to be. Like around the mid 2000s is when metal kind of becomes codified in a sense, and like Machine Head's like, all right, if that's what y'all want to do, we can do that.
Yeah,
and so.
I mean, the same kind of thing happened with like the Slipknot, like Volume 3, right?
Right.
Like where they came out and said, oh, we're just going to play some sick riffs and actually do some solos here.
Yep.
Because we could do this the whole time.
Here's some acoustic guitar. Suck it. Yeah. Ride the lightning open with acoustic guitar. Lick my ass.
Take that, haters.
And so that's something that I think is like really, really that I think is really fascinating about all this. And another thing to consider, this is sort of extrapolating out a little bit, I think it's really interesting, is that I'm gonna save that.
Okay.
I'm gonna save that. Actually, no, fuck it, because it has to do with Machine Head. So because that's gonna be like sort of, because like some people look back on this era of Machine Head very unfavorably.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like you can overhear someone, like if you walk around maybe not now, but a few years ago, if you walked around at a Machine Head concert, it was not impossible that you would hear someone say like, "Oh, I'm so glad they got out of their inward phase." You know, like you could hear people say, like, that was a thing that people would say.
Jesus Christ.
I think like Robb said that Phil said that to him backstage.
Probably.
Like some craziness like that. Like, so there are people that like look at this era because Robb's rapping and they're like, "Oh, this is their sellout era." And all that sort of stuff. And it's like,
all right, I'll be very clear. Fuck that attitude.
for sure.
Also, in a minute, we're going to talk about Robb's rapping. So, but that's not why we're going to be talking about it.
Okay.
That's not why I'm going to be talking about it.
Fair enough. And so like, but this is the thing, is you have to like understand where these guys, you have to put this in context, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, oh, cool, everyone, oh, it's 1983 and everyone's playing fast, and oh shit, it's 1986 and everyone's doing double bass because of Dave Lombardo. Okay, cool. It's 1991 and there's death metal and shit. Oh, it's 1992. No one does any of that anymore.
Right.
Or whatever, you know what I mean? Or like, or even like Pantera doesn't like do double bass and all that sort of stuff the way that people were doing it, and like the way it is done on And Justice for All and stuff like that, for instance. And so maybe like, and so you look at that, it's like, oh yeah, people like what makes something sound dated is if people stop doing it. And people had stopped playing fucking thrash metal. People had stopped playing thrash beats, and people had stopped doing that kind of prevalent double bass. And how were they to know that it was going to come back?
Right.
There's only so many, like you can only have one, there's only so many rooms for that slot of like the band that stuck to their guns, right? Like you can only have like one AC/DC in a genre.
And you do not need any more than that.
and in the metal, and like Slayer had already staked that claim.
So even
You know
Slayer though, during this time, even Slayer changed it up.
I feel like people over exaggerate how much Slayer changed it up.
Oh, probably, but they did. I'm saying that in my opinion they did.
Yeah.
Because especially going back and looking at these albums again, I basically looked at lists from like 99 to 2005 is what I sort of ended up looking at.
I kept mine a little narrower.
Okay, yeah, I was going to, and then I was like, let's just see where this goes.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to go that far, but before I even did this, from my memory, and then after I did this from this list, the overarching takeaway is these bands were trying to figure out how to sound.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Right.
And
there's lots of experimentation.
Yeah, and it's like Slayer doing even like Diabolus.
Mm-hmm.
That was very different from what they had done in a lot of ways. It was very different to what they had done. I don't know how you can deny that.
I guess, okay.
It was not thrash metal anymore. And it was not South of Heaven even.
Bitter Peace is pretty goddamn thrashy.
There are bits of it, yeah, sure.
You know?
Yeah. But there's just a lot of like open drop D like chugging on there too.
Okay, I guess like maybe that's like my.
We're just looking at it from different instrumentation standpoints. Maybe?
Yeah, maybe that's my issue with it, is that I'm like, dude, the drumming and the vocals are the goddamn same as Slayer has ever been.
Yeah, the vocals are pretty much the exact same.
And I'm not really thinking so much about how different the guitar approach is on Diablos.
I see.
But okay.
From that perspective, from the guitar perspective, I'll say then there's a lot of differences,
and
but it's weirdly still identifiably Slayer.
Right, and I will agree, because like now that I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's very different. approaches to riffing, and that's different tunings, and
Yeah.
that's that's very different than Seasons in the Abyss, and
Yeah.
or even different than like Divine Intervention. Man, I have so many hot takes about Divine Intervention. We're gonna have to save that. We can't like open that up right now.
All right, we'll come back.
But
either way, the overarching feel from this era was just like bands who didn't form during this time and were from before were trying to figure out how to sound this whole time.
Exactly.
Some of them didn't make it.
Right, and like everyone is like, in a way, whether they want to, everyone is sort of fucking cast in Metallica's shadow, because Metallica like had like laid out this blueprint of like, well, you do your metal shit and then you cross over. And it was like, well, fuck, and so like Testament tries to like do some songs where they sing and shit. It's lame, and you know what I mean. And like Creator in Germany is like, well, I guess we're gonna be industrial. I guess that's what we're gonna do. And they go from being like thrash metal to being like having these industrial influences and all these types of things. And but yeah, like people are searching and something I want to articulate, right? Because it's like Slayer did their farewell tour in like 2019. It was amazing, and like Slayer is like uncriticizable, like they, or that's like their rep. Everyone's criticizable. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But like, I guess starting around 2000. I don't really know, like the mid 2000s onward, or like 2010s or something like that. People are like, fucking Slayer, and everyone, like and they got their flowers, and everyone knew the Slayer was the shit. But I need to remind you that in like 1998 or like 97, like Slayer was playing clubs. Okay, like you can go and you can find footage of like in 97 of Slayer playing like a fucking like 500 or like a 500 person or like 1,000 seat fucking club. Okay. Like they stuck to their guns or whatever, but it was a goddamn gamble.
Yeah. It's not like they were the biggest band in the world in the 90s. Like, yeah.
No, Slipknot put out one record and Slayer was opening for them. Okay. Like,
oh.
No, Slipknot is an outlier.
Heart.
but like, what I mean, but also like fucking kudos to Slayer for like, all right, well, let's go out and win these fucking kids over.
Yeah.
Like hats off to them for taking the ego hit, and whatnot. But I guess like I just want to like really articulate that like Slayer's legacy ended in a very, very good place. And they were never sort of like critically panned. They never had that like they don't have like the Machine Head like comeback story. You know what I mean? Like if you look at Slayer's discography and the catalog, you just seem like, oh man, they just fucking started doing their thing and they just fucking kept doing their thing. And it's like, yeah, but sometimes they were only doing that thing to like 600 people.
Yeah.
It was a brief period, but it still fucking happened, So
yeah.
Like fucking Slayer, when they came to Houston during that time period, they played the fucking Eyeball. Okay? Can you imagine? Did you ever go see a concert?
I never went to the Eyeball.
Oh, fuck.
No.
Can you imagine Slayer playing the Engine Room? That's the same thing.
That'd be awesome.
It'd be fucking amazing. Right? But like, meanwhile, in like 2005 or 6 or whatever, we saw them play the fucking Astro Arena.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I don't know, like to me, that's a really important piece of this time period is like, like, I don't know, like maybe Dave McClain was like, yeah, let me do, and it was like, dude, get that fucking dad shit out of here. Oh man, we don't want to hear that fucking dad music. You know what I mean? Like, God, because that's the thing, right? Like, oh dude, I don't want to fucking listen. I don't want to sound like my fucking older brother's music. Right? Like, because you're
yeah.
So I'm just saying, like that was like an aspect that was happening. That was certainly happening, and certainly like in the air. Like you didn't know. Like it's like, all right, well, this is just going forward. We had that double bass thing for 10 years, and now we're on to something else. Now we're on to rap vocals, and like there's no way of knowing that these things were going to be. It's like, oh no, you don't understand. People fucking love double bass. this is going to be here, you know?
Well, I mean, if we had been able to fast forward to like 2002 or 3, I think a lot of bands would have not even tried to go that direction. In some cases, because boy, did it not last. And I mean, we'll get to that.
So,
but yeah, so overall, the Burning Red, which is what we were talking about like 30 minutes ago, I find this album to be just like a solid album.
right.
I will say that whenever, that's kind of where I'm going to leave it at. It's like, it's just a solid album. The songs on here range to like solid to very good
Sure.
to me. Whenever I want to listen to Machine Head, I probably won't listen to this album because I usually want very specific things from Machine Head
Sure.
that aren't on this album.
Right.
But it's a solid fucking album.
And when they play songs from it
Can't deny it.
live, you're not mad.
When they still do the Blood, the Sweat, the Tears, when they,
or from this day.
or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah,
Like,
you're not mad.
not at all.
I really only have one criticism for the record, and that's that Message in a Bottle should have just been a bonus track or should have been on a single. I like it.
I wasn't even going to say anything about it. I totally forgot about that, but I liked it back in the day. I was
So
like,
did I.
oh shit, that's cool. They're doing I mean, I didn't really know who the Police were very much back then, but I was like, this is a cool song.
It is.
Now listen to it, I'm like, just take this off the album, please.
I'm
not into this anymore.
I felt similar in the sense like I still like this is nice, but I loved it when I was a kid. But
So did I.
but after like getting into the Police,
Maybe that's what it is.
it's so hard to cover the Police,
Yeah.
and they do a better job than most because they don't try to like do it too much.
They kind of do it their own way.
Right.
It's commendable.
It is.
I'll give them that.
It is. But I wish it just would have been like, oh, this is the B-side to From This Day. I wish it would have just been a single or something like that. Because I think it disrupts the flow of the record.
Because it is like in the middle of the album.
Yeah, it's like
Weirdly.
track 8 or something.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it takes some of the shine away from like Devil in the King's Card and like I Defy. I feel like it takes the wind out of those songs. And those are amazing songs.
Yeah.
That I like, because it sucks the momentum out of the record and you got to build it back up. It's sort of what it does.
Which they don't do too bad a job at that.
Sure.
And this, like the songs I shouted out specifically were like Desire to Fire is a cool opener.
Oh, yeah.
Great opener. Yeah. Blood, Sweat, Tears, obviously. Great song. Silver, Devil the King's Card, From This Day, even 5 at the end.
That song
pretty cool.
hits a little different when you know what those lyrics are about.
Oh, I do not maybe necessarily.
Those are autobiographical.
Okay.
Robb Flynn was literally molested when he was 5.
Okay. It's a pretty good song.
It's a great song. It's a great song.
Okay.
Like I think that like the first time that he played that live was like on like a streaming thing, like within the past year. Or
Oh
something.
shit.
Some shit like that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because it's
Right.
like that intense.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's a great song.
I mean, it's like saying, the first Korn album ends amazingly as well, but for a specific reason,
Right,
So I guess
right.
lump it into that then.
Yeah, I love so many songs. I love this entire record. There's not really a song on here that I don't like, or there is a funny.
Agreed.
Okay,
Yeah.
on nothing left, I'm like Ribbon Crasher Town, because that was a thing. Like everyone had to have like a fucking ribbon crasher in their drum kit. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Um,
Not offhand.
It's a very
Some
like
sort of
specific
symbol.
sound. You'd hear it on like the Coal Chamber records. You'd hear it in Korn records. It was on like Follow the Leader and stuff like that. Anyway, it was just like
Okay.
this little fucking thing that like some like I don't know like Promark or some drum company convinced drummers to fucking put on their kit, and so it showed up in all these new metal songs.
Okay. I'll listen for it next time.
And there's like a tambourine on the upbeat of the choruses of like Nothing Left, and there's like a funny story behind that he had it set up in his kit or something, and it was like rattling while he was doing the take. He was like, that sounds kind of cool. So
Let's just do it.
so they just did it. The bridges on this record are goddamn top notch. The bridge game on this record is stellar.
Solid bridge game.
Yeah, man. I could go through and say all these like very specific things about each song. Pure Vinnie Paul in the chorus of Exhale the Vial. That might be the most old school vibe on the record. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just Devil with a King's Card. I said I love the underwater shoegazy guitar tone at the end of the bridge. You know, it just has a
That's a lot of that chorus shining through.
Right. The other song itself I'll talk about is The Burning Red. So that song is very special to me. Because that is a song that I've listened to on repeat for hours at a time, like just curled up in a ball trying not to die. Like it's, you know what I mean? Fair. That's very much like, I'm not going to kill myself tonight. You know, that kind of song, you know what I mean? I'm going to hold on one more day. So it's very, so like every time I like I can like it can play in my car and it's fine or whatever, but if I'm like listening to it, I tear up every time.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I like listen to it, not because I think about the times in my life that I was hurting that much. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. From an arrangement orchestration point of view, I think it's masterful. The arc of it, you know, like when the full band, because a lot of times whenever someone tries to do like a big dynamic metal song where like the full band doesn't come in till later, when the full band comes in, like the timbre and the vibe of everything changes so much, it's real jarring. And this doesn't. It fits the vibe and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that song. So I have two more sort of like general things to address with this era or this Machine Head record that I think that's kind of topical. Mm-hmm. Did you have anything else? Mm. Okay. So Trauma and Anger, right?
Yes.
And this applies to really all of nu metal. And so there's an interesting thing about aggression and like the trauma on your sleeve aesthetic of nu metal. And I think again, like Robb Flynn has actual trauma that he's fucking trying to work out on this record.
Right.
And nu metal is lends itself. The genre of nu metal lends itself to that kind of personal, intense, cathartic storytelling or whatever. I would have to, if I was gonna like speculate wildly, like wild hot take is like, maybe that's why you don't hear, maybe that's another reason why you don't hear like a bunch of fucking thrash songs, even though we know Robb can write thrash songs for days, is that where he was as a songwriter was trying to work through all this personal stuff.
Sure.
And these are the kind of songs you need to write if you're trying to do that. You're not going to write Master of Puppets.
Sure.
You know? But I do I don't know. I just, and so like there's some people who are angry. Okay, I think there are some people who are angry because they are hurting. Their trauma makes life itself painful. But then there's also people who are angry because they're not getting theirs. And there's a difference between getting molested when you're 5 and you know, not having the date you want to the prom or not making the football team or something.
Yes, categorically yes.
And so that I think there becomes a lot of like faux aggression in nu metal and like faux anger and like faux trauma, you know, and like kind of like playing up the idea that you had a terrible childhood when maybe you didn't.
Maybe I don't know that I want to say that explicitly, but
because how would you know, right?
Yeah,
I just know
definitely faux anger, absolutely.
Yeah, because I'll say this: it feels different whenever Jonathan Davis is talking about it than whenever David Draymond is talking about it. And don't do it again, mommy. Ah! Like that feels different.
Yeah,
and.
I mean, listen, I'm not gonna.
But I don't know, man, dude. Maybe his mom beat the shit out of him. I don't fucking know.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, I don't necessarily want to discount that because I don't know one way or the other. But in this sense, it's just about the way that he's presenting it.
Right. And so like without like speculating wildly, I think it
Nice
is
catch.
thank you. Speculating wildly about any specific artist or their trauma or things that they endured, I think it is safe to say that there is certainly some new metal band out there that received paychecks, had records, sold records that were playing up their trauma a bit. I think that's safe to say.
Okay. There was definitely one.
Okay.
You know who you are.
I
I don't know who they were, but there probably was one.
So yeah, I don't know, but that was something I would like, just this idea of like trauma and aggression, because aggression is very consistent throughout like metal from like thrash forward, but not necessarily like trauma. And new metal is very trauma centric.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I think we've talked about that before, like how we feel like that probably, they felt like they had permission to do that more from grunge. Having just kind of happened, right?
Absolutely.
Because that's what that was all about.
Right.
But just not in the same way musically.
Right. Absolutely. So, that has to be.
I feel like that's probably the case.
The other thing is Machine Head and hip hop influences. So the other thing to hit on before we move on to the next record.
Yeah.
So you wanted to say something about Robb's rapping.
We'll get there.
Oh, okay.
Not on this album.
Oh yeah. There's some questionable ones on the next one.
There sure is.
For me, especially on this record, it feels natural. It feels organic.
Yeah, it does.
It feels like Robb is in this place being influenced by hip hop, and it's like this is a place that he arrived to. Like he's not influenced by Limp Bizkit and Korn, and Rage Against the Machine. Like it feels very clear that he's influenced by like Ice Cube and Eazy-E and shit like that. Like, not that I know enough about hip hop to like trace those influences, but from interviews and things like he was into that shit when it was coming out in the fucking 80s and the 90s and shit like that. And the goddamn Davidian video, he's walking around with pit bulls and cornrows and shit like that. Like we can't, you know what I mean? Like you can't act like the fucking Davidian video was like Metallica's One and it's just like a bunch of fucking long haired dudes wearing black. No man, he had baggy clothes and cornrows and pit bulls walking around fucking LA, walking around fucking Oakland, you know? Why are you surprised? You know what I mean?
Right. It doesn't, in no way on this album especially does it feel like he looked at what was going on and said, I got to get me some of that.
Right.
It feels like it belongs in their songs that they've done here.
Right. And so
say what you want about like his rapping proficiency. Like I don't fucking know one way or the other, but it seems fine.
Yeah, on this album, it feels organic, it feels good or whatever. But yeah, I feel like that's a thing that like people like to talk shit about a lot, and it's like that's just who he fucking is. And if you don't like the hip hop influence, then you don't understand what you liked about Burn My Eyes from the fucking beginning. You know? Yeah. Because the reason that he sounds so much different than every other metal vocalist and the reason the rhythms are different and the reason the guitar is different, that's a fucking part of it.
Yeah.
You know?
That's part of why that stood out at the time, because nobody else was really doing it that way.
Right. Okay. Cool. All right, you want to talk about Supercharger?
Not really, but we can go there anyway.
All right. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
No. I mean, I only have a very few specific things to say.
Okay.
About it. So.
Go ahead.
I mean, I don't think this is a bad album. I just don't think it's good. And those are different things, you know? Like, I don't think they did a bad job.
Do you know what the first sentence I have here is? I don't think this is a bad record.
There you go. It has to be said. But yeah, this album gets a fucking terrible rap, I feel like. And I thought of it terribly for a very long time.
Yeah.
Well, no, you know what? In fact, I just didn't think much of it at all for a very long time.
Right.
But I heard it and was like, no, thank you. And then put it aside, and that was it. So this is an album that weirdly I never owned. This is like the one Machine Head album that my sister owned.
Oh, nice.
And so I remember her having this, and fuck, what I wanted to do was text her and ask her to send me her thoughts about this, and I should have done that.
Oh, well, man, that's what we're going to talk about Machine Head again. So.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll do that next time. But so there was something about that album that like that pulled her into it.
Okay.
And she was like, she started out way big into like pop and stuff, and then progressed into like huge Marilyn Manson fan and all these other sorts of bands. Huge Garbage fan, and eventually onto Machine Head. And that was like, I think at the time, sort of like some of the hardest stuff. You know,
right? Like
whereas to us, this is like
this record is like her version of U2's Pop for me.
yeah, there you go.
It's like, well, that's the one that came out whenever I was getting it. That's the one that was out whenever I was trying to get into this. So it's very special to me because it's the first time I was exposed to these elements.
Exactly. But that's what I want to ask her. I want to ask her, like, do you look back on this and is it special to you, or is it like, man, fuck that album?
Oh, so, like, oh god, yeah.
Well, I'll bring that back around later on. But yeah, this is not a. This is the one album of theirs that I never actually owned from that time period. Because actually thinking about it, I don't think I ever actually owned Through the Ashes of Empires. I think by that time it was like digital, and that is
not quite. It wasn't quite. There's a whole other the problem with.
Or maybe I got it burned from somebody or something like that.
The problem with Ashes of Empires is that it had a real had a real fumbly release in the States, that it was released in like October of 2003 in Europe, and then it wasn't released until like April of 2004 in the States. So the release of it was real like fumble bumble because they really lost so much because they changed labels. There was all this fucking drama, which we'll talk about next time.
We'll get there.
We'll talk about next time. But,
anywho, yeah.
But it wasn't like I remember I bought it because I saw it at Best Buy beside the new Kill Switch record, like Through the Ashes, End of Heartache. And I was like, oh, well, fuck it. I think I read a good review. I think this new Machine Head record's all right. Let me get that and the End of Heartache. I got 2 today.
Treat yourself.
Yeah. But it wasn't like, because you couldn't get it, you know.
I see.
So it didn't have like a big like, boom release date the way that like the Blackening did, and then Unto the Locust was the first one that like I didn't have on a physical copy because I bought it digitally. So but anyway, Supercharger.
I didn't own this album. Didn't listen to it a lot, but the times I did, I was not very into it. But again, I don't think it's a bad album. I don't think they made a bad album. I think that the album they made isn't what I want to hear.
Yeah, I at the time I got it and I was like, okay, well, that's not bad. I'm gonna put something else on though right now. So yeah, and we'll get to that because I think that's the real question, and that is going to be the answer to the question of like what killed nu metal. It's like what were you listening to instead of Supercharger? I think is the answer.
Well, I think we're going to have very different answers to that question.
We will, and all of them just like put a knife in,
Yeah.
They're all the murderer, right? But yeah, for me, I feel similarly. Like I don't think it's a bad record. To me, it was like a more like, I don't know the right word, but like a more like, it's like you took a few dials of the Burning Red and you turned them in some weird ways, but you turned them in directions that I didn't
like.
Well, it was like, okay, it's like lyrically and everything and attitude wise, it's like a little more confident, like a little more like braggadocious. But one of the things I love about Burning Red was its vulnerability. So it's like, oh well, yeah, that's not really what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And then the record, it does not have that swing that the Burning Red has. It's kind of a very like straight down the fucking middle kind of record.
And then it also, in addition to that, it doesn't have any of the interesting production in terms of like tone or
Yeah.
of the previous albums.
It just feels like it's just there.
Kinda, yeah.
It feels like it was very rushed production. Almost.
Maybe, yeah.
Like there wasn't a lot of thought of like, well, what? Okay, cool. That's the track. What cool shit can we do now? It feels like it was just like.
It just feels kind of toothless.
That's a good. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe.
Because one more thing I'll say about. Well, we'll talk about it the next time we'll do one of these. But after listening to this, I listened to this one twice for this research, as it were. And after I listened to this the last time, I went ahead and, out of sheer curiosity, let it roll through to From the Ashes. I was like, just let me verify for myself that the things that I'm thinking about this are the case. Because I was like, I just don't want to listen to this album anymore. I'm just kind of bored here. And like, let me just make sure. And sure enough, fucking Imperium and Bite the Bullet and all that shit rolled in. I was like, man, this is so fucking good.
Yeah,
I want to listen to this. And then I just turned it down. I was like, I can't right now.
Okay.
So just to make sure that what I feel like about this album is the case, I feel pretty confident in saying this album just isn't that great. In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with this.
Well, yeah. And so another random thing that I put was like the bridge game on this album, on this game is definitely not as good. That's for sure. Okay, let me skip down. Yeah, and then so like the track by track, like this is what I thought was interesting because as I like if you look at my like notes on the track by track, it's like cool song. Nice groove. Okay, I really like this one. Dig everything about this one. Dig this one too. Da. Like it's all like okay, and like, or like the song "All in Your Head." Like I really like this one. Cool lyrics and chorus. And then there's the funny like, was it like, like something like, "It's all inside of you. It's all inside of you." Like,
there's so much of that on this album.
And I'm like. All right, it stands out, but it doesn't bug me. And there's a lot of like, well, that was kind of weird, but I don't know if it's bad.
Yeah, it's never. Sometimes it's bad, but not always.
But I'm never like really sure that it's bad. I'm like,
no, this album reeks of experimentation.
Yeah,
for better and worse.
Yeah.
Like
I can.
It to me, it feels like. While they were in their maybe rushed production is the way to go with that, because to me it feels like they were in the studio recording these songs, and on the fly Robb was like, I'm just gonna do this thing. It's gonna be weird, but I'm gonna try it. And then
that's great.
And then they never
song.
They never came back around to say whether it was good or not. They just did it and just pushed it out there.
It does also feel like some of these songs could have been chopped up and used to make other songs on the record better. Because the album's like 56. That's one of the things I wrote at the end. Like the album's like 56 minutes long.
Fuck.
Okay, and it's like I think you can cut, like the last song, Supercharger. It's like meh. There's some cool hooks in this song, but overall it's kind of blah. It's like they should have called the album something else and left this track off.
You're gonna cut the title track. You better call it something else.
Exactly. Yeah. Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
Maybe
yeah,
not.
Sure.
It would have been fine, right?
Sure.
I was like, it's not bad. It's just not worth sitting through 56 minutes for. I was like, if you cut Supercharger and only the names end with Blank Generation, I think the record would get like 20% better. Overall, not a bad record. I don't mind listening to it.
Maybe if you also cut off Blank Generation, the record would be like 35% better.
That song is like kind of a. We'll talk about that.
This is where the rapping is gonna come
We'll
in.
talk about that one in a second.
This is the one.
So overall, not a bad record. I don't mind listening to it. Gives me occasional like groovy stank face, like, there's nothing offensive on here to me. Like it's not like it doesn't frustrate me and piss me off the way that like Reinventing the Steel does. And I think that's another like really interesting point of comparison because like we said, when we talked about how just incensed you and I are about that record, it's because we didn't get another one. Like if this was the last Machine Head record, oh God, I would fucking hate it. You know what I mean?
Was it this? It was 2000. Okay, never mind. It was the year before. Yes, absolutely.
But like since I'm like, this is just a stepping stone to Through the Ashes. I'm like,
I don't know. If this had been the last Machine Head record, I think I would just think less of Machine Head overall.
Exactly, because now
I don't know that I would be very mad. I would just be like, well, whatever. Let's just forget about that.
Well, they had a few good records in them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You like,
but knowing where they went from here, it's like,
right.
You deny me this.
Yeah. And so, all right. So let's talk about like the song "Blank Generation." So you have a lot to say. I don't have much to say.
I don't actually have a lot to say. I just have to talk about that one rapping part towards the end.
Okay.
It's fucking atrocious. What are you doing, Rob?
It's a lot.
What are you fucking doing? Like, you thought this was all right. You thought this was fucking all right. All I did was copy and paste the entire fucking rapping portion just so I could have reference to talk. Like, it's just fucking bad.
So
that's all.
Hit me with an egregious line.
The whole thing. So here's to our collagen lips and saline tits, to our growth hormones and antibiotics. It doesn't rhyme first of all. Also, what? To the Hollywood world we made out of Barbie doll hearts after we melted them down so we could make a new start. At least that rhymes. But what are you talking about? Here's to a new generation scared and wondering why. Okay, that's fair. Instead of playing doctor, we play shoot each other and die. Okay, but no.
I gotcha.
Anyway, it just goes on like it's really, really forced and just cringy and bad.
It's ambitious. And it misses the mark.
It's the exact thing earlier where I was like, he just tried something and then just pushed it out there without thinking about it. That's what I think. He's like, I've got a verse here. Here we go. Let's do this.
Yeah, I wrote, this is a cool song. I did the lyrics. And then, another wacky bridge.
Okay, you know what? That's a more charitable way to think about it.
I was like, I still think it works though, because there's an interesting arc to the lyrics. You know what?
At least there's an arc to the lyrics. I'll give it that.
Like the I will give someone like a little leadway and a little like benefit of the doubt of like, if it's like, oh, you're trying to say something, and I like the thing you're trying to say. But yeah, that.
Yeah, he is trying to say something.
What?
It like. No, like this to me is on the level, if not worse than the fucking Disturbed thing. The "Mommy, I'll do it again" thing. It's right there or worse, because at least the Disturbed thing has a single thing that it just does, and then it gets out of there. This just goes on for fucking ever, and it's all over the place.
I hear what you're saying. I guess like the other thing though is that this song's like really long.
It is really long.
And so again, like I give like I'm a little more because it's like if you're it's like it's already a big ask for me to listen to a 6.5 minute song. So and if I see that link, then I'm like, okay, I'm in. And you go in some fucking weird places and not all of them work. It's like, well, I kind of asked for it. I signed up for this.
Okay.
Down with the Sickness feels like it's just going to be like a straight ahead the song. You know what I mean?
It does take a left turn when it gets to that point.
Yeah.
You don't really see that coming.
So
that's true.
So, but yeah.
Okay. I mean, listen, this is the only thing in their entire catalog that I'm going to shit on this directly and this hard.
Yeah.
So,
another like maybe funny thing is like the song American High. I'm like, cool vibe.
Yeah, go on.
I'm not sure if the bridge is charming or dumb.
What was the bridge?
Fuck. It all blurs together.
I have various notes about this song.
And then the other thing I was gonna say, I'll pull up the bridge in a second. Let me listen. Okay. The other thing I was gonna say is like, I think there's a charm to the song overall, though. It does maybe have a like, I'm just one of the cool kids, right? Vibe to it, because Robb is like 34 when this song comes out. So like you see, he's singing about high school or whatever.
He's talking about acting a fool.
And he's 4 years old. So
this song starts out, the first lyrical content you hear in the song is a Tarzan yell. For some fucking reason.
Yeah.
And then then he goes, woohoo, woo, woo, woo. And then he's talking about acting a fool for like 4 minutes.
Oh, I think it's the. I think that's the part that I think is like dumb.
What are you doing?
Let me get this in the mics.
Okay, yeah. Don't want to get this copyrighted.
That's a cool groove, man. Those verses
Sure,
are good.
sure, yeah. That's not what's wrong. That's not what is wrong with this track. The groove is cool.
Oh yeah. And like, but now I'm in a band and you're kissing my ass, like that. I'm like, is that like a like? Okay, or is that like a what the fuck? And I don't know. And that's like probably like the most interesting thing about the record. Oh, the part I was talking about was a different song. The
okay, yeah. I didn't catch that, or like, I didn't.
Adrenaline, or something like that. I forget which. I don't know exactly what song that is, but yeah, like that's my take on American High.
But then I don't know if it's the bridge or maybe the second or third verse of that song of American High. The whole time there is just like bargain bin Tom Morello solo going on.
Oh, really?
There's this really bad like scratching. They're trying to do like the Bulls on Parade thing, and it just sounds really bad.
Oh, okay. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, so
I believe you.
But there's just a lot going on in that song. This is super questionable.
Right.
But the groove. Totally fine.
There's something to it, right?
Yeah, for sure. No problem.
The trepanation. God damn it, Rob.
Which is apparently the same word. I looked that up earlier.
Oh, really?
Trepanation, like the band, and trepanation is the exact same thing. Just different spellings.
That's good to know.
Because I was like,
I've lost some disrespect for Rob.
Because I looked at that and I was like, are you like trying to do some weird wordplay? But no, it's just the same word.
Oh man, that's good to know. Okay, cool, man. I'll retract. The song Deafening Silence. I love that song. I think that's an amazing song. It's more of like a rock song, like a hard rock radio song. But that's a good fucking song, man.
Okay.
And Crash Down Around You is great. White Knuckle, nice groove, it's cool.
Or was it White Knuckle Blackout?
Yeah.
Which is, I can't decide if I hate or really like that title. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
It could go either way.
I was like, I think these songs are good, but I just don't feel these lyrics as much as I did Burning Red. It doesn't feel like a lazy record, though. Like, it doesn't feel like phoned in. It doesn't feel, you know what I mean?
It kind of feels like they wanted to do something with it.
Yeah, but maybe they, again, like, just didn't have the time to, like, put all the bells and whistles and figure out, like, you know what, that track we should just really take the middle of the track and make that the middle of this and like, get rid of that and da-da-da-da-da, you know, man?
Or given the length, like, just edit some of the album down.
Yeah. Because, again, this is the CD era, so it's like, oh, we're going to charge, like, fucking $18 for this, and you know what I mean? So we can't give them just 40 minutes of music. God. Well, we only wrote a good 40 minutes. Well, you better write 20 more fucking shitty minutes. We'll just put that on the back.
So whatever you got in your pockets right now, just slap it on there.
Someone will like it.
It's for someone.
Someone will like it, Rob. So yeah.
Do you have many more notes?
I think that's pretty much it. Like, one other thing I'll say about Supercharger, because when we get to Catharsis, Catharsis is a very complicated record for me because there's people that hate it because like, oh, Rob, social justice warrior bullshit,
sure. They hate it for stupid reasons,
right? And that record is a mess of a record, but it's honestly, it's a mess similar in a way that this is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
But something I do like about it is I do like that some of the hip hop influences came back to the forefront. Not that I love the way that they're executed in all instances, but I do like that it in a sense, Catharsis legitimizes Supercharger. And
it wasn't just like a one and done. It wasn't a fad.
Exactly. It's like, no, man, I fucking love this shit. Like, no, this is part of who I am. And so that's an aspect of Catharsis that I really, really like. Because it makes it to where, you know, it makes Burning Red and Supercharger canon, if you will.
Right.
Because I mean, for a while there, like Supercharger was like dustbin of history.
Yeah.
And I remember when we saw them live at Fitz do the evening with, and they threw Bulldozer in. I was like, yeah, I was like, those lyrics are dumb, but man, this song rips.
Like on the one hand, like if you see them, seeing them live and seeing a band like that bust out a song from an album like this, you're kind of like, yeah, okay. Why not?
Well, and it's like what a great song to do like after a mid-set drum solo. Like what a great like get everything back going, But like, man, Bulldozer goes against the grain.
It's pretty goofy, but it's fun.
It's fun, exactly. Yeah, like it's not bad. It's not poorly done, but
it's not poorly done. But you're also not saying anything really here. It's just kind of goofy fun, and that's fine.
Right.
You can do that.
But
the only other note that I have is on Kick You When You're Down. At some point, I guess Robb, because he's doing it in the microphone, just goes like he's doing the cymbals with his voice.
I think that happens. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
So all of my notes on this album are just like goofy vocal shit Robb is doing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So right.
The rest of the album's fine.
You're totally right. I think we really we unearthed the
we'll get to them later.
But no, I think that is like a big aspect of this is that I don't know, man. I think you're totally right. So like one time I was able to hear like all the tracks that David Lee Roth did, like all the vocal tracks he put down for like Running with the Devil.
Like without the music?
Yeah.
Just solo.
And I'm not talking about like what you can find on YouTube where you're like, here's just the solo track or just here's the vocal soloed.
Okay.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay. What are you talking about?
Because each one of those things that you do here that he does on there comes from a different take.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And there's a lot that isn't on there.
I see. Oh man, I gotta go find that.
And I don't know if you can.
Where'd you hear that?
I was hanging out at some dude's studio. He's like, "Hey, check out what I got a hold of."
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, okay.
And like we sat there, and he just like started like pulling. Like we listened to like one at a time. Okay, this is like 10 years ago. Okay, and it was like fucking wild because you get a sense. I was like, oh my god, David Lee Roth was burning so much tape, like.
Right.
Like, yeah, let's do another one. Oh, you got one more time. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like.
Just freestyle until he found the right one.
Just going for it.
Oh,
and
that's
like,
wild.
And like, there were so many takes of that. And there was wacky shit in all of them. But then like, someone goes through and it's like, oh, that thing right there is amazing.
Right.
We'll take that one. And it feels like on this, like Robb got like one of those.
Exactly. Right.
You know what I mean? Or like, like
did he know he was recording then? I don't know. Maybe not.
Right. And it's like these, like, you know what I mean? And so it's like, no, man, if you want that shit to like flow in there, man, like that, like you got, I don't know. It's interesting, like as a point of comparison.
Right.
Of like, all right, well, Because like, all right, aside from like these were like 10 separate takes or something, aside from like the actual like singing the lyrics take.
Right.
Like he had 10, like, we're just going to push record, just fuck around and do shit, Dave.
Yeah.
And they found like the 3 that were really cool.
Maybe that's what Robb was doing. He was doing the Running with the Devil thing. Oh, shit.
God damn. That's one of the best records ever made.
It's really fucking good.
That first Van Halen record, it's unfucking touchable.
Yep.
All right, so I guess we're gonna move on to nu metal.
Yeah, just in general
and whatnot. So like, basically, here's the segue. One of the main reasons that this record didn't hit me at the time was because I was like, fuck this. I'm putting Iowa and God Hates Us All back on. Sorry guys. Oh, you know what I mean? And so, and that's that's basically my big thesis is that because so before we talk about new metal in general, like let's talk about why this record wasn't successful. Besides it not being a great quote unquote record. Now the standard narrative of why this record wasn't successful is because it came out after September 11th, and so there wasn't as much promotion for it. Like the video for Crashing Down Around You was pulled, blah blah
Right.
blah blah.
Like
blah,
it had
blah,
buildings being destroyed and all that. Yeah.
right, and
So it got pulled. And yeah.
I'm sure that's a factor, but I want to present something I feel is some counter evidence. Gonna flip the script a little. So what I did is I just went through and I searched like new metal albums 2001, metal albums 2001. You know what I mean? And I did this for like 2000, 2001, and 2002.
So I did the same thing for 2000, from 1999 to 2005.
And so I'm gonna make like a little mark here because Supercharger came out in October of 2001.
Yes.
So I'm just going to make like two little marks here. Now this is obviously not like all the records. I just made like notes of the ones that I had that I knew I'd listen to, or ones that I knew that other people were listening to.
That's what I did too.
Right. So there's that. Okay. That is, that's like a 4-month period.
So this is what are the barriers again?
So this is from August 2001 to December.
Gotcha.
Of 2001. So 2 months on either side
right.
of when Supercharger came out. And it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Like over 20 records that I still remember or that are still relevant or like are still, you know, known that I either had or I know people who had or whatever.
Yeah.
Like 20 fucking records. Okay. Like closer.
Okay, yeah, they can pause it if they overread.
Well, I'll put it in. You know, I mean, you can look at it.
No, this is the only way.
Look in the description. And so I'm gonna say that one of the reasons that machine that Supercharger didn't do so well is because goddamn, how much more of a saturated fucking market can there be? Like to where, you know, you have Darkest Hour, Every Time I Die, Edema, Meshuggah, American Head Charge, Slipknot, Converge, System of a Down, Soil, Slayer, POD, Il Nino. Then you get a Machine Head record, Chimera, Incubus, Flaw, Dope, Seven Dust, Mushroom Head, all these new records. You just don't even have enough. Even if you only want to buy 5 of them, you're not gonna have enough money to like also get fucking Supercharger, you know. So I'll say that I think that that's a big aspect that isn't talked about because people think of like new metal as something that died, but people don't think of there being like a new metal bubble per se, I guess. And I think this is this is that time period. And also I think the biggest aspect is that, and I'll elaborate on this in a greater degree, but there's nothing when you look at this list of records, okay, and you think about some of these records or some of these bands, right? Supercharger might not be a bad record, but it's definitely not a relevant record in this time period. There's just not much that's done on that record that isn't being done better by some other band or done in a more interesting way by some other band during this time period. And so,
yeah,
I'll elaborate on that with examples.
Yeah, no, I think I can get behind that probably.
You know, like, so.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Here, like they wrote a record that, so yeah, I was like, it's just not a very timely record in a way. I mean, it is like, it's like, yeah, it fits in there, but it also like, it doesn't fit like relative to where Machine Head stood. Like, cause there was never like, Machine Head never fit this well into a scene.
If it's too well, almost.
Right,
Is actually the problem.
right. And like because Machine Head was always more on the heavier side, and they didn't like Burning Red and Slipknot's first album were recorded at the same time. Like, like Machine Head, like no one knew that Iowa was gonna happen. It was gonna be like, guess what? Blast beats are in vogue now.
I mean, for as much as you can say that their albums after this, Machine Head's albums after this, could have possibly come partly from, people were doing solos and blast beats and double bass again. Oh, cool, let's do that. For as much as you can say that, I don't know that that's necessarily fully the case, but even that, this is the most like of its time album that they've ever done.
Right, right. But Machine Head were never really of their time, so it doesn't. So it's like
right. I mean, regardless of band, even that on its own is like not a great thing.
Yeah,
that's gonna sink you at some level, right?
Right. And so it's like, why, So it was just like, okay, so here we go. Like if you compare it to other records, like it has some new metal trappings, but it just isn't very unique compared to what's around it. It's too aggressive to be a crossover thing like Limp Bizkit, Stain, Drowning Pool, POD, Seven Dust, or System of a Down. Like there's nothing on here that's like poppy or melodic enough that's going to cross over the way that those bands did. And they all have records out.
Yeah.
It's too it's too hip hop to satisfy like old school guys, while also not being as hip hop as other things that are happening. Eminem, to a certain extent, ICP, Head PE,
yeah, I mean that just is hip hop, yeah.
Limp Bizkit,
but that's the thing, like it's not even as aggressive as, to me, it's not even as aggressive as the fucking first Limp Bizkit album.
Well, that's that's a very aggressive record.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no.
That's my point.
Right, I got you. Well, but then what Limp Bizkit becomes after that record, I feel like is like a separate fucking thing. I'll say it's not
in a way.
I'll tell you this: it ain't nearly as aggressive as this Il Nino record.
Okay.
I love that fucking Il Nino record. It's my favorite record of all goddamn time.
Shit. All right.
And that came out like
about a month before.
Was it a month?
If that, a couple weeks.
Yeah, like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It ain't nearly as aggressive as the Chimera record that came out like the same day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It has nothing on the melody of the Flaw and the Seven Dust record that came out. You know what I mean? It has nothing on the unique. Well, you can't. It's not really fair to compare any other album to Toxicity. That's not fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so it's like, yeah, it's not intense or technical enough to satisfy the burgeoning, I don't know what to call this fucking scene, where you have like Dillinger Escape Plan, Meshuggah, Mastodon, Converge, like these intense bands that are like pushing the boundaries and developing their own sort of musical language unique to the band.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're into fucking Remission, or wait, Remission isn't out yet, but if you're in, you know what I mean? But
they had an EP out at this time, but
it comes out soon. It comes out within just 6 months or something of this.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? So it's like, even if you did get into this and then, or you're like, okay, this Supercharger record's cool. But then like if Mastodon was going to speak to you and you get it, you know what I mean? Like Dylan, like fucking Calculating Infinity's been out for a few years at this point. Meshuggah, this other thing too is interesting, is Meshuggah is starting to gain traction. They put out the Rare Tracks record.
Yep.
And that was like, just like, well, dude, people starting to fucking know about you. You got to give them something. And nothing wasn't ready yet.
Yep.
So you get that. Like,
I got that album for Christmas that year.
Nice.
And heard War for the first time.
Right. And you also have like the metalcore scene burgeoning up at this time too.
Yeah.
Right. And so like if you're into that, you're not going to be into this. It's not heavy. And then there's also like this section of kids that start with like Korn and Slipknot, but then they get exposed to like they were on that path to the heavier shit, like Opeth, like the European shit, like Opeth and Arch Enemy and and all that Soil Work, Dimmu. It's also not heavy enough for the kids that are in the more extreme US stuff, like Lamb of God, God Forbid, Come Here, Shadows Fall. And it's not unique enough to stand out in like the new metal crowd, like Mushroom Head, or there's no gimmick, or like Dope and
Right.
Il Nino and American Head Charge or Flaw or Rammstein or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
It kind of just didn't do anything well enough to hit any of those notes.
like, oh cool, you want some like really cool melodic catchy shit and some really killer grooves and like just in your face guitar, dude, just listen to Seven Dust record.
Yeah.
Because that's a killer fucking Seven Dust record. Animosity that came out like a few weeks after this. You know what I mean? And so, but
yeah, there were just other bands doing interesting stuff in different ways at the time.
yeah.
That
So
yeah,
and I think that like in my answers to that, or like in all that, you see why new metal was going to kind of, because there's these other more specific, more specialized genres that are starting to gain traction. Like metalcore, like new wave of American heavy metal, melodic death metal, all these things, so.
yeah. That's definitely a part of it, and so I made a list very similar to this, in that I just took the albums that I grouped them into two sections by year, and they're the albums that I either owned or listened to a lot of, and connected with, and then the ones that I sort of knew about and didn't connect with.
Right. So when I think about the two records I was listening to instead of Supercharger, because I don't know when I got a hold of the El Nino record, but I definitely bought Slipknot the day it came out, and I definitely bought God Hates Us All the day that it came out.
It was Slipknot, it was God Hates Us All, and it was Toxicity.
Yeah,
like that's what I had on.
And those are the big three that I was listening to. The Seven Dust record, to the El Nino record. I liked that Dope record a lot because I had their first record, so, but yeah, like, why the fuck am I gonna like listen to, like adrenaline, woo, like, why am I gonna listen to that whenever like I have like people equal shit and like slit your throat and fuck the wound and you know what I mean? And
yeah,
Warzone. Like, why? Sorry, Robb and the crew,
Yeah. No real reason, I think, is the answer there. The trend that I saw from my personal perspective, I sort of mapped out this from 99 to 2005 is what I ended up stopping at. And you can sort of see like the number of albums in 99, just the sheer number of albums here that we're dealing with.
Right.
And as you scroll down, 2000, a few less. 2001, a few less. Barely anything at this point.
Right. 3 inches of blood. How about that?
In terms of metal.
Right.
And it really just falls off a cliff at around like 2002, 2003.
And, right. And so like, what were you listening to instead of
Nothing.
new metal?
Nothing. Very little music.
So,
or also, this was around the time that I think I mentioned before, like I was working at HEB at the time.
yeah.
And I like weirdly got into like 60s like doo-wop and shit.
Nice.
And then I started watching anime around this time. and got into like Japanese music in a weird way. But in terms of metal, it just really fucking fell off a cliff.
2002 was whenever I got into jazz. And so that's interesting.
But looking at these lists, if you scroll up to the very top of my notes here, I have a note about new metal generally.
There are 100 bands I'm seeing that I could list as all being part of the samey new metal scene, but that feels too reductive and not worthwhile.
And what I mean by that is there are a billion bands to me like Dope and Il Nino to some extent, or Chimera, or Drowning Pool, or any of the fucking slate of bands that was happening around that time that for like 2 or 3 years blew the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
They were huge. But what they were doing, to me, couldn't sustain past a couple years. And it just got oversaturated and boring, and I just didn't feel that angry anymore. And all these different things all coalesced into like, I just don't want this anymore. That's what pushed me out of that.
Right.
Really.
Right. And that really is you really have to take your hat off to a band like Slipknot, who sort of, or even Machine Head as well. But like, I'm gonna say Slipknot, because I feel like Machine Head is like, Machine Head is its own different thing with different sets of criteria, because they straddled like 3 paradigms,
Yeah.
But for Slipknot to sort of find its way out of, with Volume 3, because whenever they did Volume 3 and that was successful, it was like, fuck y'all, we can do anything we want now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, but it was like you're saying, so many of those other sort of just, I don't want to say token, but like just clearly, quote unquote, new metal bands like Dope. You know what I mean?
Like,
not really Chimera. They're more into like new wave of American heavy metal.
I don't want to be that reductive about it, but it just feels like so much of that stuff was so derivative in a way. It just felt so fucking, I feel so old, but like it just felt loud and angry to no real end.
Well, I'll even this will still apply without maybe being as reductive. Seven Dust is a good case study for this, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Huge Seven Dust fan. I love that band quite a bit. I have like their first 6 records or something like that. 7, right? I don't know, man. But their first record's amazing. Love it. Second record's amazing. Then Animosity. Seasons is one of the greatest like heavy rock records ever made, maybe. And then the guitarist leaves, and then stuff's not as good, but it's charming for the next record. And then shit gets weird, and they put out like 3 records in like 2 years. They just make too many. They just make too many records, and I can't keep up. The guitarists come back, they do another one, and I haven't listened to a new Seven Dust record since then, because I don't need any more.
Yeah.
And it's because it's like, how much better can y'all get at doing this kind of song?
Yeah, right. That's almost kind of what it feels like happened, is like this new form of, it's weird to say new form of metal, because like we were saying, like it was just find something new to add and do something different, and everyone was kind of doing their own little thing. So to say it was all one new form of music feels also reductive and like kind of ridiculous.
Right, but that's the thing, is like you would have like you would experiment, but then you would have a success with a thing, and then that was the thing you had to do. The first Powerman 5000 record is funk metal, is weird.
Yeah.
It is a weird fucking record. And then they're like, well, let's fucking try like this, like just fucking, Doc Martin stomp boot metal or like, like let's industrial dance metal or whatever. Like,
let's be the weird space industrial band.
Right. Hey, no, you're ready to go. I mean, it's fun. It's great or whatever, but it's like, fuck, I guess that's what we got to do now. And it's like, dude, we only needed one.
Right. You should stop putting out albums now. You did the one thing.
And it's like, I feel like it's just like it must have been just so frustrating to be a band during this time period, to sort of be torn between, you know, having to have this like rigid defined sound, but also because it's, you know, like if you and there just can't be that many bands or artists in a space that are allowed to be like, oh, well, that's the experimental one that does that. Every record is different. There's not, you know, man, there's not enough space for everyone to be Bowie.
Definitely not to be successful doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because if a record, okay, because a record company's just going to stop giving you money to make records if they can't depend on getting X number of sales out of that record.
Yeah. Because very important to remember, this was still the time of record companies
Yes.
owning all that shit.
Right.
Dictating what happened.
It wasn't the time of, well, I do this really weird thing, but I found my people who like this really weird thing, so I get to keep doing this really weird niche thing.
Right. And they can give me money directly, however that happens.
Way before all that.
Yes.
Way before all that. And so yeah, it's interesting because it's like, on one side, nu metal's a very experimental fusion genre, but for the bands that got some type of success, whatever they got success doing, a lot of them, that had to become their thing.
Yeah.
It was almost, you know,
is what it felt like, at least, for sure.
And then you just only need so much of that. And then inevitably you get used to that thing, and then they like deviate from that thing too hard, and you're like, oh, fuck this is not what I want. Like, because Aru from Machine Head joined El Nino. And I worshiped the first two El Nino records. And then the third one has Aru on guitar. And I was like, I don't need any goddamn fucking third tier Machine Head riffs in my El Nino.
No. Oh no.
Like, keep those pinch harmonics to yourself. I don't need this. I'm not here. I'm not at El Nino for the double bass. I don't need to know that you can do double bass too. Fuck off. That's not why I'm here. And I hated that record.
Oh man.
When it came out, because it was like, I don't know, man, because that was a thing that started to happen in the mid 2000s, where like everyone was like, we're metal too, you know. I'm like, oh god. Anyway, whatever. I can't get on that soapbox right now.
But we're not there yet. So
we're not there
we'll
yet.
Get there eventually. Yeah, I don't know that I have. Like, that was kind of my main takeaway there. It was just like that's why it seems to me. It really feels like the grunge bubble again.
Yeah.
Like, this thing happened, and then people tried to be that thing, but we had enough of it. And then because that same thing happened to a lot of those grunge bands, where Pearl Jam tried to be like a weird. I feel like classic rock is a way to describe how they tried to go with like no code and everything after that.
Okay.
Soundgarden did Down on the Upside, and it was still Soundgarden, but it was like different, more poppy in a way. Alice in Chains literally stopped making new music for a long time. Nirvana obviously stopped making new music. Some of those bands just died off.
Yeah, there is like a real like line between, you know,
Smashing Pumpkins found like pop success with like Melancholy and and then they went into some weird shit from there and
right.
But like none of those bands kept making grunge.
Yeah.
In the way that people thought of it.
Right, yeah. Like, you have the, like, I remember Candlebox, right? Like, that first Candlebox record is this, it's an amazing sort of, like halfway point between sort of rock, like 80s rock.
Yes.
And grunge.
Yeah.
And it is good.
It is very good.
And then that second record... They were like trying to do their live shit or something because that was like popular at the moment, and like no one knew what to do. You know, that's really the story of like after Kurt Cobain died, no one knew what to do.
He was the field general, and they lost their way.
They lost it. No one knew.
Man,
which way is this going? Nobody knows. Did you hear those Machine Head guys are rapping now? Oh God!
You hear the
all bets are off.
Robb did the Tarzan yell. What the fuck?
And like, okay, or like Sugar Ray, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever heard the first Sugar Ray record.
Yes. Lemonade and Brownies, is it?
With that fucking song 10 Seconds Down
10
that was
Seconds
on
Down. What was that on? Escape from LA?
Yeah.
That was a good soundtrack.
I remember listening to that soundtrack and getting to that like and I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
Then it's like, again, shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, man, that's heavy as shit. I went and bought that record. Like, even though the rest of the song doesn't really work as well, I was like, there is potential. And I went and bought that record. And then like their very next record is just pop. Just pop. What was it called? I don't remember.
I bought that album though. I bought that album and 311's Transistor the same day and listened to them a lot.
Yeah.
I ended up kind of liking that Sugar Ray album. I think I bought it
the first one or the second one?
The second one, actually.
Okay.
I think I bought it for Fly, which was the single.
That's the one.
But I liked a lot of that album otherwise.
You know what? Fair enough. Because I never listened to the rest of it, but it was just like that. I was like, oh, that one has that fucking single on it. You know what I mean? And then and it just always like was always like.
I'm not here to say that it's good still. Like, I don't know if I
sure, right.
I haven't listened to it since then.
But it was just like, dude, fucking no one knew what to do. That's what I'm saying.
That's a great point.
That's what I'm saying. No one knew what to fucking do.
Like people, like I said, yeah, we came into this thing. People were trying to find their sound, but they didn't actually know what the fuck. No one knew what was going on anymore.
Right. And so another thing that I think is an important part of the equation that I wanted to throw in there as to like, oh man, my notes got scrambled. So if someone asked me to like give like a hot take answer of like what killed nu metal, right? I would say Eminem and Slipknot killed nu metal. That would be like my hot take answer. Okay. So I'll elaborate on both those briefly.
Okay.
First, Slipknot, because that's shorter and we know what we're talking about. So basically, once people got a taste of that intensity, because basically like, oh, is nu metal a fusion genre? Then fucking Slipknot's just like, well, we're gonna do it all. We're gonna do every gimmick.
We're gonna fuse all of it together.
Every gimmick. We have masks. We have jumpsuits. We have two. We don't even have just one extra drummer. We don't have percussions. We have two. All right. Oh, guess what? We're not that band with a DJ. We also have a sampler. Okay. We have like a keyboard player, sampler, and a DJ. Like we literally do all of it. Like they were like every gimmick.
Yes. Totally.
But they also made amazing music.
Yes.
And it was a cohesive artistic onslaught of a full package. Yeah. Everything about it was right and consistent and authentic and
they were just more intense than any other band. Like
exactly. Like once you get a taste for like that intensity, dude, even Pantera kind of sucks after that. Like it's not okay. I'm not gonna say Pantera sucks. It's not gonna hit the same.
It's hard to go back.
Yeah, right. It's not gonna hit the same. Like you're not going to like get that intensity of Slipknot and then all of a sudden go back to like follow the leader and get the same thing from it.
Right.
You're not gonna like dead bodies everywhere, dead bodies in my hair. Like that's not.
That's not the lyric, is it?
It's not.
Okay.
But like
maybe.
Like after you've like experienced, enemy, show me what you want to be. I can handle it. Like, it's
right.
Fucking like, got the life ain't gonna do it.
Well, to me, going back to the first Limp Bizkit album, like that was what I got a lot of from that album was that intensity. Mm-hmm. It was like surprising amount of intensity from this weird unknown rap rock group.
Right.
I was like, oh shit, this is pretty wild. But then after like something like Slipknot comes along, you go back to that and it's like, this ain't really much anymore, is it? There's some cool stuff on that album still, but like,
it ain't this. It ain't. And that was the thing about Slipknot. It was intense in all directions, right? Is vocally it was like the delivery was intense, subject matter was intense, the drumming was intense, the phrasing, the rhythmic language they were using was intense. Yeah. Which is the thing that we've talked about before. Is that for me, I was like, oh God, these guys listen to death metal.
Right.
And I can tell these guys, you know what I mean? Because I was already into other stuff. Like I was already into the more extreme stuff. And so, but then for a lot of people, Slipknot was this gateway Because if you're like, oh yeah, I like this extreme shit, you were gonna dig deeper and you were gonna end up with Nile and you were gonna end up with like all that crazy shit. You certainly were not gonna have any fucking place on your CD shelf for fucking dope.
Right.
If you were a fucking 14-year-old that had In Their Darkened Shrines or some shit. You know what I mean? Like you weren't gonna.
Right. You weren't gonna come back with the next Godsmack album or the next Primer 55 album.
Yeah. Primer 55 was not gonna get it done for you.
Shit was done by that point.
Like, you know, Black Seeds of Vengeance. Like, that's not like, you know.
Yeah. The new Disturbed ain't gonna do it for you.
Right. Even though that second Disturbed record is legit, I really enjoyed that record. They're good at what they do.
Listen, maybe we can talk about that at some point, but those first Down with the Sickness, Believe, 10,000 Fists,
Invincible?
maybe. The first 4 Disturbed albums are fucking good. Really fucking good. I stand by that. Less so the first one, actually. But definitely those next 3.
I really like, what is it? The second track on the first one? Fuck. I can't think of what it's called.
I don't know.
Like, it's like that tempo right there. Anyway, I like that. I like that. I like that second one. I like that second track. And then I listened. That second Disturbed record goes down real easy.
Believe, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Liberate your mind. Liberate your mind. Liberate your mind.
If I had,
it's so, you know what I mean? Like
you're right. Yeah. Like if I had to give you, I don't have a guilty pleasure band, but if I had to give you one, that would be it, because they do some like objectively goofy shit,
right?
Vocal wise, and
Yeah.
like some objectively like simple shit in some
Shout.
other ways.
Shout.
Those covers are not good.
Yeah.
None of their covers are very good, I don't think. But either way, whatever.
Right. Yeah. I really like that you said that I don't have a guilty pleasure band, because I think that idea is total bullshit also.
Yeah, whatever. If you like something, just fucking like it.
Fucking A.
Who cares?
Yes. Toast.
Who's gonna go shit?
Cool. So yeah, like that's so that's like the one side of like why I think Slipknot killed nu metal.
Okay.
You know,
The other side.
because
Okay.
because of the intensity, right? And like, oh, you know what I mean? It's just everything, right? Slipknot has it all, right?
Yeah.
And then they upped the ante on Iowa too, of like, we're going more extreme,
Right.
right? And then probably like the final nail in the coffin was Volume 3, which is like, we're doing whatever the fuck we want.
Right. We're not gonna go more extreme in that way. We're just gonna do everything else here.
Right, like we're gonna do all the things that you don't think we should do. Like we're gonna be melodic, we're gonna be poppy, we're gonna be all those things, right?
Yeah.
All right, so Eminem. Like, why do I think Eminem killed or had a role in killing nu metal? Okay, so white people bought plenty of rap records before Eminem. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'd argue, I think there's an argument that he was the first artist that felt like he was for the young white male audience.
Yeah, probably.
Like the first hip hop artist that like, if you're you know, if you're an angry 14-year-old, you know, like, you know, and you're like, all right, I like Tupac, but I don't really know if it's for me.
Yeah.
Or I like Busta Rhymes or Ice Cube, but I don't really know if it's for me. But then you hear Eminem and he's talking about trailer parks and shit like that, and you're like, oh, that is me. You know?
Well, it's interesting too, because on the one hand, I agree. On the other hand, it feels like to a mid-teenager, Eminem was still very like transgressive. Like it was kind of like a thing you shouldn't have had. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
But I
for
think
sure.
that was part of the appeal.
Absolutely, because you weren't supposed to have Marilyn Manson either.
Right.
You know
So
what
on the
I
one
mean?
hand, it was like for you content-wise and like origin-wise, I guess. Like he was just a white kid who grew up in a fucking shitty part of Detroit.
Right.
And so a lot of people can relate to that in various different ways.
Right.
Um, but also it was like you're not supposed to be listening to this.
Sure, yeah, there's a forbidden aspect of it too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and when I say like for you, because okay, so like Finn McGinty, the punk rock NBA guy, he did a good video about like, you know, new metal or what killed new metal or whatever. And sort of his basic thesis was that these were kids, what did he say? It's like these are kids who like they were too emo for like traditional metal. They were too angry for grunge, and they weren't urban enough for hip hop. And there was just no one else talking to this group of people. A lot of it were people who were like in rural areas and like small towns and shit like that, you know? And no one was speaking to this demographic. So new metal comes along, speaks to that demographic, and then it works, right?
Yeah.
That's like his basic idea, which I agree with.
I think I can get behind that. Yeah.
You know, mostly because that was definitely me. You know, I was definitely like wanted Nirvana to be heavier and angrier, but then I was like too emo and like sensitive for Metallica. You know what I mean, in a sense. But I think about like that Ozzy record, that Osmosis record. That's a pretty emo fucking record. Anyway, that's one of my favorite records all time ever.
I remember really liking that album
It's
a lot.
so goddamn good. That'll be a bonus episode listening party record.
That was the one with Back on Earth and stuff, right?
No. That was the one with Perry Mason and I Just Want You and Thunder Underground and
Right. Okay. Never mind.
Ghost Behind My Eyes.
Yes. That's a good album.
It's so good.
I'll listen to that again.
It's so good. Like, who can we get on the case?
Anyway.
How big must your balls be?
Write a song about Perry Mason.
And be like, I can make that work.
And he did. It's cool. Great. Yeah. Excellent riff. Great
God
solo.
damn.
Man. Oh, that's good.
Anyway.
What a weird album. Anyway.
So,
Eminem.
But so like that idea, like these are kids that weren't, you know, urban enough for hip hop. But then you have Eminem, and like Eminem's like, hey, you don't have to be that fucking urban. Like, so I think so what I'm saying is like, if like the hip hop aspect of new metal is what was scratching the itch for you, why the fuck are you gonna listen to Robb Flynn's rapping? Like, why are you gonna listen to that shit on Supercharger when you can go get the fucking Marshall Mathers LP?
Sure.
You know?
And I did at the time. I was listening to that instead. Yeah.
This is so good.
For sure.
And that's the thing too, is that like M was like making, you know, like he was making angry, intense, amazing, and honest music that you felt like you could relate to. And like,
in some sort of a way, yeah.
you can, well, I mean, you're not going to relate to all of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But it did feel like it's amazingly executed.
Yes.
It did feel honest, you know, and
to a fault. And that's part of the like transgressive part that I'm talking about. Like, it felt like nobody should be talking about this thing.
Sure.
Some of the things he's talking about, right?
Sure. And if you were attracted to like the intense, because I remember it wasn't until I don't remember when. Actually, I do. But yeah, it was in like fall of 2000 that I first got exposed, because it was me and Jet. And like we were both dating girls that were in band, and they had like a contest, and like it just says a lot about like, because we played football together, but we weren't like friends, you know, because I wasn't friends with anyone on the football team, not really. And
It's more like a brotherhood, really.
No. It was like I only trust y'all motherfuckers on this field. Is what that was. And it's like, yeah, I will bleed with you and for you and like blood, sweat, and tears on this football field.
Yard 1 to 100.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm not gonna come to your party. I'm good. I'm just gonna go home. But Jet was like, hey, you want to ride to this thing together? I was like, okay. And then we're like, and I was like, well, I gotta stop at I had to like stop at Kroger or some like stop at the Randalls or some shit in Atascocita to buy tickets for the Pantera concert or whatever. But anyway, I'm like, hey, have you ever listened to Slipknot? And he was like, have you ever listened to Eminem? And so we're like,
that's where this comes from.
Yeah,
this one encounter.
this is it. Yeah. So we're like trading, you know, and he's like showing me like Busta Rhymes, he's showing me DMX, and you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
and whatnot. But I remember like I never like really resonated with hip hop, but I was like, that shit's intense, and I like things that are intense. So
Yes.
and then I think, but and I think there's also like sort of a shift to where hip hop culture starts to become like truly mainstream culture. I can't really, I don't really have the authority to like speak on that, but I think that there's something that happened that also starts to happen around this time.
It was kind of
also,
yeah.
you know,
It kind of had like extremely roughly from like let's say 95 to 2005.
right.
It took a while, but it was happening for a long time.
Yeah. It wasn't like a single moment, but I think that is like sort of like, yeah. So like when did Speaker Box come out? For instance,
04.
04? Was it that late? Okay. I mean, not that like Outkast wasn't making amazing music at this time, but I guess I think of like that album as almost like a watershed moment of like hip hop is now the pop music. I
mean,
that might be a tad reductive because I'm ignorant.
I think that was just kind of a weird one because of how poppy the Love Below was, and Hey Ya specifically was just like a stupidly huge crossover hit with like anyone from kids to old people.
Right.
You know, everyone fucking knew that song.
Well, and like that's another thing too, right? Is that that I wrote down here on this list of albums is that in May of 2002. So we're on, you know, so if we're relating everything to Supercharger, this is what, like 7 months after?
Mm-hmm.
That's whenever the Eminem Show record comes out.
Damn, 2002. Okay.
Like May 2002.
Because Marshall Mathers was probably 2000, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was May of 2000. Yeah.
Okay.
And so you have the Eminem Show, and the thing about Eminem Show is like, what was the song called? Without Me? Is that what the song was?
Without Me, yeah.
They played that motherfucking thing on rock radio. Like,
damn, did they? Wow.
They did. I remember hearing it on the Buzz. Yeah. Like that.
I do remember that, yeah.
So I think that might have been, that was the first like crossover hip hop hit that I remember. Like everybody knew that song, and this is the thing, everybody loved it.
Yeah. I mean, this was the age of like TRL and shit on MTV, and that song was consistently like number one for a while there.
Right. And like that record was so fucking huge. I bought that record.
Yeah.
I bought that record. I didn't even fucking like rap, okay? But I bought that record because I'm like, that is so goddamn good. And like the first track on there is like called White America, and like all the lyrics on that and shit like that. Like it's very, you know,
I think there was a B-side from a single on that album, or I think that was the case. That was called was it called Entertain You?
Mm-hmm.
I think. And a dude that I worked with at HEB would bring his portable CD player with the fucking CD single and just sing it while he was hearing it the whole time. And he let me borrow it, and I like took it home and burned it because I had a computer by this time. That song is so fucking good. It wasn't even on the album, but it was like better than the album to me.
Right.
But man, Eminem was doing a lot of good music around that time.
Yeah. And so, and like, I guess like that's the thing is, it's like the Eminem Show really was like a pop, like that's a pop rack.
It was a huge crossover hit.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's like another part of the equation of like hip hop culture becoming mainstream culture. And I think this is like a stepping stone, or like Eminem show is like a stepping stone towards that. Because it's not to say that Eminem is representative of hip hop culture per se, but I think that it is a stepping stone toward that. You know what I mean?
I think that it's fair to say, and probably likely, that the people who were in the nu metal community, that would have been the likely stepping stone for them.
Right. Like, because I mean, and there were other people who, you know, there were other people. I guess like another thing too that like Eminem was good about is he, you know, like. Because I remember being like, oh, who's D12?
Yeah.
Who's Obi Trice? Or whatever, and then like, so it like, spreading the wealth, I guess.
Sure, because you would hear those references in his songs, and then they had a song out at that time.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Or they'd be featured and stuff like that. So it was like trying to give all these like pathways and sort of stuff to like get more into hip hop and hip hop culture and whatnot.
Yeah, and then right around the same time, because it was Eminem, he was associated with Dr. Dre. Chronic 2001 came out.
That came out in like 99 though, or 2000.
Was it 2000 or 2001? Maybe
it did not come out the year that it's titled.
Did it not? Okay, well maybe I'm wrong about that.
That's all I know because I looked it up and because I was like, wait a minute, what? Wait, what? Well, what?
I forgot about Dre. I guess that's all that is.
Oh shit.
So, but yeah. Anyway, Dre's new album came out, and then 50 Cent's first album came out right around the same time, and shit just exploded. And because they were all. So if you were into Eminem, you probably would have gone one of those other ways too, if you weren't already.
I was right. So it's called Chronic 2001, but it came out in November of 1999.
Motherfucker.
What a dickbag.
Motherfucker.
You ain't Prince.
He was trying to party like it's 2 years in the future.
Yeah. He tried to tone it down,
He thought that...
He was just trying to push it out before Y2K. It was
like, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
It's like, what was that event called?
Anyway. But yeah, well, and I mean, and that was like, so yeah. You had like the Slim Shady or whatever the fucking first Eminem record.
Slim Shady LP.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he was hugely featured on like the Chronic 2001, and then you have, the Marshall Mathers LP, and then you have like Eminem show. Like he fucking ruled those like that like few year stretch.
Totally.
Or whatever.
Absolutely.
And then you had the fucking 8 Mile movie and all that sort of shit. And like that fucking song starts off with like distorted guitar. Dun, dun, dun. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, but yeah, like
I saw that movie in the theaters now that I think about it.
But yeah, that's my.
I think that's a valid assumption. That's a likely pathway. For sure.
Yeah. It's because. And then I guess like also to another extent maybe is that you have like it seems like maybe this is just sort of a thing that happens in cultures like or as like sort of art progresses or something like that is that you have these periods of experimentation where like just a bunch of stuff like there's all these like sub communities and subcultures and things just go blah and then it just takes a while for those things to become sort of codified. You know what I mean? Because I feel like what happens in like the mid 2000s and whatnot with metal is it's like, oh, well, this is what metal is. Now we know. Metal can have harsh vocals. It can also have melodic vocals. It can have grooves. It can have solos. You can have tight syncopated, kick drums synced up with the guitar. You can have thrash beats. You can have blast beats. You can have double bass. You can not. You can do all. And then these are all the things. But you didn't know they didn't know that in 1998.
Right.
But all of a sudden that was very clear in 2008.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, and I wonder if that is a thing that happens with other musical genres and whatnot, and like this period is a very much an experimentation period. And the other thing too is like you have the lack of sort of information flow, right? Because I don't know how much Robb Flynn did or did not know about the death metal scene or the black metal scenes going on.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Like maybe if he would have fucking listened to that Dimmu Borgir record that had come out earlier that year, he might have been like, okay, we need to fucking thrash it out, guys. Cause fucking people still love this. Or if he would have listened to Opeth or some shit like that. Like, I don't, you know what I'm saying?
No, I think that's a great point. And that's actually something that, yeah, okay, I did make a note about it. As I was going through these, I was seeing some of the albums that were here, and I was like, "Holy shit, that was out at this time." So my final note is like, not we're done or anything, but something else I would like to do here is go through these same lists and pick out the things that like I didn't really know were available at the time, or wasn't aware of, or didn't discover until much later,
right,
or never discovered, and like how, if I had known it at this time, how would things have been differently?
That's an ultimate fascination of mine.
Like, that's so wild to think about. Like the first, I don't know if you know, the first Kylesa album was out in like 2002, and they're a sludge metal band from Georgia, like Baroness or Mastodon or somebody. In 2002, like at the same fucking time as the second Disturbed album, or Nothing, or Natural Born Chaos, or The End of All Things to Come.
Yeah.
Like, how if I had found that shit like a decade before I found it, like how would things have been different?
I'm constantly asking myself that question about the Suffocation record, Pierced from Within, because that was out in 1995.
Fuck.
And
oh man.
And if to me, like, we're gonna end up talking about it in depth, because I feel like that is, for me, that is the perfect death metal drumming record. Because it feels like it's the first death metal record where it has all of it. Like, here's really cool grooves, right? Death metal grooves, that are really tight and like actually groove, right? Like Morbid Angel has slow parts, but I don't feel like they groove very well. They're just slow parts and they rush in weird spots. And because Pete Sandoval had to put so much fucking effort into doing all the double bass and blast beats because no one knew how to do it. And so he was like,
just had to brute force it.
He was paving the way for that. So he didn't have time to work on his pocket. You know, but I don't know. To me, Pierce from Within puts it all together, right? Because you have like those grooves, you know, you know, like that kind of stuff. But then you also have like mid-tempo double bass, you know, like you have that, you have fast double bass, you have blast beats, you have suffo blasts, you have bomb blasts, you have skank beats, super skank beats. It's all in there, you know what I mean? It's technical, but it's not brainy. And I'm like, man, if I would have fucking heard that record in fucking 1997,
right,
and 1998, man, that one's a big question mark for me, because I feel like we would have been really into that record. I feel like we would have, like, because it's technical in a very weird, brutal way.
Sounds like something we would have been into.
So, because it's technical, like, you know how like Meshuggah is like, oh, that's a really hard part to play.
Yeah.
Okay. Suffocation songs are not technical and like psychedelic and mind numbing in that way. They accomplish that because, like, oh, that is a really weird sequence of parts.
Okay.
Yeah. Like how those parts and the transitions, but it all works. It's not. It somehow avoids being like just rando riff salad.
Right. Because that's why the Meshuggah stuff works. It's like, this is so hard, but it grooves.
Right.
You can. Yeah, it works. So that makes sense.
So yeah, but like that's an example of like, what if I would have got like what would have happened if I would have heard this when it came out, right? You know what I mean? Or like even this, like Opeth and Dimmu Borgir, like these are like some of my favorite albums. These were out before I graduated high school. I didn't find out about them, and I didn't get into them until like 2 years later.
Exactly.
You know
Exactly.
what I mean?
There was a ton of shit throughout looking through these things where it was like, I came back to this a decade or whatever later, but I'm not going to list that because I didn't know about it at the time.
Right.
So, yeah, tons of wild stuff that, man, what if?
Oh, something else I was going to say, you know, like regarding the Eminem stuff and like, oh, basically, oh, this is hip hop for white people. Like, I feel like ICP fits in that category too.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like that's fucking, I'm not throwing any shade towards ICP, but like, you know, like, but like, I don't know, like redneck rap, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I always thought of them as kind of like a joke band.
Right.
But
they're not really.
They're kind of not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess like, I knew a lot of rednecks that were really fucking into ICP.
So did I.
Yeah. Like I was at a funeral once.
Yeah. Okay. Go on.
And this was a guy. This dude was.
Were they playing Fat Sweaty Betty at his fucking funeral?
Dude, they had the tomahawk dude like on the casket. And this was a grown ass man. This dude was older than me. Okay, his name was Keith.
Man,
this dude is like, he's hugely important to like my musical development because I was like 13 years old, and he shows up at my fucking house because his mom and my mom are friends. Okay, and he was like, "Hey, little dude, I heard that you played the drums." I'm like, "Okay."
And
he's like, "Play me something." I'm like, "Who are you? Why are you? I don't know you.
Why are you yelling at me?"
He's like, just play me something, man. And I don't know what I played. I might have fucking tried to play fucking something off of the More Things Change, honestly. And he was like, "Fucking A, man, you're pretty good. Let's load up your drums." I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, "Yeah, man, you need to come jam with me and my friends tonight."
Oh shit.
And I was like, "Oh my fucking God, dude." I was like, "Well, I gotta talk to my mom." And so
she's cool. She's cool.
And I talked to my mom, and she's like, this is like one of the coolest things my mom ever did. She goes, takes a deep breath. She's like, "Richard, I want you to do this. I want you to be able to do this because there's going to be older people there that care about music the way that you care about it. And I think it will be good for you. But there's going to be drugs there because I know Keith. Just please, 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 for me, just don't smoke or drink anything, please."
Oh man.
I was like, "Okay." And so packed up my drums in the back of Keith's truck, went to this fucking house in the middle of fucking Dayton, you know, and like, I was like, "Oh, hey, this is Gary, and this is Brian, and da-da-da-da-da. Do you know Thunder Underground?" And I was like, "Yes." "And what about Cowboy Some Hell?" "Yes." And wow. I just played like as much of these songs as I could with these dudes who were like fucking in their 20s. Right?
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it like put my like musical development on like a fucking rocket ship.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then he was like, "Do you know about Rush?" And then he like got me into Rush. Like this is like my older brother Rush story is Keith, man, you know? Like cool. Just oh my God, man. Like just such a righteous fucking dude. One time when I was older, I was like, "Hey, do you want to go to a show with me?" And I went and scooped him up, and we went to Cellar Bar and watched like Stratiotis play. Do you remember that fucking those guys, you know? Yeah. Like it was anyway, he was just a cool fucking dude, just always down. But yeah, he got really into ICP.
Yeah.
It had like the fucking like I was like, wow. I didn't know this. I didn't know anything about him being into ICP and then I like show up at his funeral, and it is like ICP themed, like a kid's birthday party almost.
Oh, shit. Man, you listen. You get in the dark carnival, you do not get out.
yeah.
Here's what I'll say about that though. It's like there are so many worse things to get into than ICP.
It ain't hurting anybody.
Like if you are at a point in your life when you feel like you need to get into that lifestyle, you need to be a fucking juggalo. More power to you, dude.
Dude,
I'm not gonna stop you.
I have absolutely nothing negative to say about ICP. I had plenty of like snarky negative things to say whenever that like magnets, yo, how do they work? When that song came out like fucking 10, 12 years ago.
Sure. And there's like questionable lyrical shit throughout their history, but on the whole,
so I went back and
hands off.
I listened to the like "Fuck the World" because I only know the version was on Woodstock '99. Because I watched the video of Woodstock '99 all the time as a kid, and I was like, that's fun, but I never like felt motivated to go and buy. I was like, I'm not gonna be that guy, you know, for whatever reason. And also like, I have a very hard association of ICP with like someone we knew in high school.
Me too.
I think we're thinking about different people.
Probably so.
But so
just shows the proliferation of ICP.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, I went back and listened to like the album version of it, and it's very clear that it's tongue in cheek, and that they don't take themselves seriously, and that there's a sense of humor about what they're doing and everything like that. And I was like, man, fucking good on you guys. So,
yeah. Like maybe I'd have to go back and check, but I recall quite a bit of like pretty sexist shit.
Well, yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Of course, yes, yeah. But like,
so
I don't think we can crucify just ICP for the sexism in hip hop lyrics.
Yeah, I know,
yeah. But yeah, I think they were like sort of like, oh man, dude, I'm into like fucking masks and makeup and shit, but I really like all the rap. You know what I mean? Like, there you go. ICP and Twisted and all that shit, man. That's for you.
Right.
Like, you might have started off with Mushroom Head, but that's where you are now. And that's where you're gonna stay. You know?
So I going through these lists, I came upon a few different like just like funny little things, and one of them was because I saw Mushroom Head albums in here from time to time, and I never did listen to any Mushroom Head.
There's some cool songs on that second record.
Okay, I could see that.
There's some ambitious stuff on that first record.
Do you remember which album? XX.
Well, there was like I was like messing around. I was poking around there in that song, and there's this song called like Bawop.
So they have an album called Super Buick.
Okay.
Like the car Buick, but it's a Super Buick.
Okay.
And the album opens with the track Bwomp, and it ends with the track Bwomp Reprise. And I just found all that hilarious. Super Buick featuring Bwomp and Bwomp Reprise. I don't know.
That record or that song, because I didn't realize it at the time, but that song, that album that they put out, XX, is actually like a compilation record.
Yeah, I saw that today.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that until today.
Yeah.
But the thing about like this.
Oh, this is Bwomp.
Yeah.
I didn't listen to any of this, by the way. I just find the titles
weird.
Hilarious.
It's really weird, and it goes all over the place, and it's not all good, but it's interesting and it's ambitious. So I give it a lot of leadway.
Yeah.
But okay. I think there's like a really, really bad rap verse in this.
Okay. I wouldn't necessarily doubt it.
You might want to take your headphones off.
I can hear it.
But it's like Mortal Kombat rap.
Yeah. I'm kind of into it. I don't know. It's Mortal Kombat rap.
Dun, dun, dun. Like, but it's not even like Mortal Kombat. It's like Lords of Acid. Like, oh, like that is like a bad. I feel bad, man, because when you hear like keyboard sounds like that, it's like seeing like CG from this period too. You're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
go.
That ain't gonna age well.
You're like, oh boy, early adopter.
Someone's got to do it.
But the next record they did, there's
Like
some,
M3. Was that the next one?
I don't know.
I saw that one come up. I just thought it was funny also that they had a record called Super Buick, which is a car reference, and then they had M3, which is also a car reference. But it might be the third in Mushroom Head album. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just strange.
X3. Maybe it's just one song. Maybe I just really like Sun Doesn't Rise.
Okay.
Yeah, that might be. And that dude has a really unique voice. So it's like, cool, man, do you? But yeah, like,
I just remember the big kerfuffle at the time that maybe neither them nor Slipknot started, but like, who came first with masks, man? I don't
no one
know.
cared.
I didn't.
Those guys didn't care.
Yeah, I'm
like,
sure
they didn't like. And it's like, it's a shitty thing, man, because I'm sure Mushroom Head was doing their thing and Slipknot was doing their thing, is probably like just fucking independent. But then since Slipknot gets popular, it's like, well, dude, go and sign all the bands with masks. Because
that just as a general rule is not going to be a good time for everyone involved.
Because that's how fucking record companies worked. Past tense. I don't know how they work now, but it was...
If they work at all.
You know, it's like, dude, you need to get your ass down there to fucking Ohio and get any fucking mask band you can find before Sony gets there, okay? Yeah. Like, it was just like, you just wanted to sign the band just so that someone else didn't get them.
Right,
That was what happened in the fucking, like, the grunge explosion. Like, all these records, like, because Nirvana was not supposed to... Nevermind was not supposed to do what it did. Right?
Yeah.
So they were like, we can't let this happen again. Go to every city and any band that anyone that has the most moderate following, sign them. Right. Give them just $2,000.
Yeah, just enough to make an album.
Yeah.
At least at that point, it was grunge and it was, you go to Seattle and do this. But for Slipknot, it was like, go to the fucking cornfields in middle America and see who's playing out there somewhere.
Well, no, but they did that in all cities, though, because it was like, well, what's going to be the next Seattle? Is DC going to be the next Seattle?
Yeah.
You know, like Clutch got scooped up in all that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, dude, well, this is enough to. We'll give you we'll give you a $1,500 Guitar Center gift card, and we'll give you an advance of $2,000. This is more money we've ever seen. Yes,
biggest gift card I've ever seen too.
So,
good lord,
that's like 1992 money. Also,
right?
That's different kind of $1,500. I think that's all I had.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I had too. The only other random note I had going through these lists was, man, Alien Ant Farm had some pretty good album names. But only because they all just referenced ants. I was like, you know what? I appreciate the commitment to that bit.
I'm ignorant of this.
Well, so their first album was just Anthology.
Oh yeah,
but the ant was capitalized, so you knew. And then the next album was True Ant, which is like, you're a true Ant Farm fan. And I was like, okay, that's good. And the ant was also capitalized. I don't know, it's just stupid.
Oh yeah, I see.
Man,
and those were their only.
Past that, they didn't do it. So
what losers?
Yeah, they didn't stick to it that long. But those first two, you know what? That's good stuff, man.
Dude, that I forgot about what a big deal that first record was. People were really into that.
Yeah, the Smooth Criminal cover.
Yeah, man.
Going through these lists, I've thought about albums I haven't thought about in so long, and I could just list off all this shit and talk about it for a long time, but I won't.
I will tell you though, like going through, because I actually made a playlist.
Okay.
Of all this.
Oh
like,
shit.
All this has a song referenced on a playlist.
Okay.
Not that I like necessarily listen to, you know what I mean? Because I was like trying to like sort of get in that headspace and like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I will tell you that like when I listen to Remission, when I listen to like, you know, what was it, the Fire Ant song or whatever
March
it's
of the
called?
Fire Ants.
Yeah. When I listened to that Mastodon song, in the context of like everything else that was going on, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it.
This ain't right. This shouldn't be here.
But yeah, when I was like, okay, I get why people were real hyped on this.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
fucking awesome. Because it's it is really technical, but it's technical in a very weird way. It's not technical in the way that I gave a shit about stuff being technical at the time.
Right.
Because it wasn't like fast and it wasn't like, oh, I don't know how you play that double bass pattern. You know what I mean? It was technical in that like that riff's put together in a real weird way.
Yeah. That's something that Mastodon does a lot of.
Right. So and then also like a lot of the like the metalcore stuff that, you know, like Norma Jean and stuff like that I missed the boat on at the time.
Yeah.
When I listen to some of it now, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, like, because it's like, oh, you know, like, fuck this like thin ass breakdown you're getting on a supercharger on like whatever track 3 of Supercharger or whatever, like, you know. Like, this shit that these kids are fucking doing from the youth group is way heavier than this. Like,
yeah.
And like way more, you know what I mean? There's a different intensity to like a lot of the metalcore stuff that like I hated because, oh, well, I don't like the way you kids, I don't like your haircut or whatever stupid thing.
Your pants too baggy. Wait, they're not baggy? The pants too tight.
Yeah.
I see.
And that Stained record, Break the Cycle. So like I know that like we always remember like, you know, like it's been a while or whatever like that. But I used to play along that whole record.
Really?
I would put that on the headphones. I would play the whole fucking record.
Huh.
And there's some cool songs on there, you know. And that first Stained record is pretty fucking.
Well, so I listed the first one, Dysfunction. I really liked that album back in then.
Mud Shovel fucking rips.
Mud Shovel. There was some cool shit on that album. I haven't listened to it in a very long time, but from what I remember, some very cool shit. I don't remember what else was on the second one besides that song. But I know they had a few singles from it.
There was another one. Away, or am I thinking of like every Godsmack song? Just get away, keep away, stay away, get away.
Yep. From me. You are not. You've never been less. Like no one has ever been less wrong about anything than that. That dude had one idea for that album, and he executed on it many times.
I think this was Outside was the other big
song. Oh, I'm on the outside. You're looking in. Yeah. That's right.
That's a good song, man.
I don't think it was a bad album. Just overplayed all the shit.
Especially It's Been a While. That's like I would always skip that song. Yeah. That was like when that was around the Nickelback boom, and that's another thing that fucking happened.
So actually, that which Nickelback are you talking about? The State or the famous one?
The second one.
The one that got huge with Photograph and all
almost
shit.
Called it. No, Photograph isn't on that one.
It's think. Not. Okay, maybe.
I don't know. Yeah. Almost. Whoo! So I would. Someone, I'm not going to say this anyway, but don't be surprised if someone appears out of these walls and punches me in the mouth. I almost called the second Nickelback record Through Silver and Blood, which is a Neurosis album.
Silver Side Up is what it was. Okay. Nice. Oh, shit.
I'm sorry, Scott Kelly. I'm sorry. Don't hurt Miss Steve Till.
He will appear. But yeah, so what made me think about the first album, The State, was that I realized, I didn't know this until today, that album came out, they self-financed that album in 1998. That album was done and out in 98.
Mm-hmm. But on Roadrunner.
I didn't realize that. And then they re-released it on EMI in 2000. And that's the one, because it has a different cover and everything. And that's the one that I bought.
Interesting.
So I didn't know about them until 2000. But even at the time, I was like, "This is a fucking pretty good album."
I was like walking around in like a fucking Sears or a Montgomery Ward or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And
That's something you do back then.
I caught like the video for Leader of Men
Yeah.
playing on some fucking like closed circuit TV, and I was like, this is a cool song.
Yeah.
And I went and bought the record just because of that. And I was like, okay.
It's a pretty all right album.
And then you know, then like that second record came out, and
I was like, nope.
and I was like, wait a minute, is this that band? Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because all of a sudden it was extremely produced and polished and
it was just fucking everywhere.
and everywhere. Yes.
And I guess like that's another thing that like became codified, or like I don't know if I'm saying codified, whatever.
Yeah. Whatever.
Petrified by you. Is like rock radio. Like what was rock radio? Like what rock radio was to become. That also became defined in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of like it will be Nickelback. Is what it will be.
Yes. It will be Incubus. It will be Crazy Town. It will be Filter.
Even to a lesser, but really Nickelback was like Nickelback and Three Doors Down. Like that's what it was moving forward. And you were gonna like you could turn the dial a little bit this way, but that was your Metallica of you know what I mean?
Yeah, that sort of
your
vaguely inoffensive, like what even is hard rock? I guess, but not even hard rock, just radio rock.
Yeah. And like that's what it was. That's what it was gonna be, and then it was, you know, and like that's kind of still what it is. Like you turn on Octane, you're gonna like now the bands you hear on there or whatever, it's like, oh, we got a little more distortion or we got a little more of this or whatever, but it's still the same idea of like, here's like a rock thing because it's like, I don't know, what's the word? Safely aggressive in some way.
Yeah, it's sort of like inoffensive.
Yeah, it's inoffensively heavy.
Yeah.
It's not challenging artistically. It has some riff maybe ish, and it has a verse. It has verses, chorus. You know, in a chorus you can know after hearing it one time. And that is the house that Nickelback built.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. The only other thing that struck me, which we've already really talked about, is it's like there's so much interesting, weird shit that came out in the years leading up to 2001. But then in 2001, you just have that slab of God Hates Us All, Iowa, and Toxicity, and Lateralis. And
oh, that's also in...
Fuck. What? God, you just can't...
I forgot Lateralis was in there.
Yeah, man.
You know, or even like fucking Digimortal, which is a mess of a record, but there are some incredible songs.
I have that on
record.
here too. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Even that Candiria record. Remember that was on my jazz playlist. That comes out
yeah.
in 2001. Crazy, like and like I guess like what blows my mind is that there's so many things whenever like on here that's like, oh well, that's still relevant.
Yeah.
You know, or like well that, you know, like Opeth, and I mean there were Devin Townsend records that came out, you know, like Terria I think came out in 2001, and Physicist was in 2000, you know.
The Wikipedia wiki link to, well, I'll more on this in a second. The wiki link to that album just goes to the article for Physicist, like what a physicist is. But the other thing is, so the way that I did this was I went through Wikipedia, like it's metal by the year, because you can just look at that page. And this got me to, for the first time ever, actually edit a Wikipedia article.
Oh, nice.
And I started, because that's a rabbit hole you can just go down, man. There's shit to fix everywhere. And I saw a few of the things I made notes on. I was like, I'll go fix that later, maybe.
Doing the Lord's work. Yeah. But yeah.
That's about all I got.
It was plenty.
I mean, I could go on with these lists for fucking ever, but I think we made our point.
Yeah, it's a very like formative transitional period for us specifically.
Yeah.
Like I feel like we could riff on this era. And again, I don't know. Again, I think it's why Machine Head is such an interesting band, and probably why they're so important to us, because I don't know, man, when CJ was on here last time, and like that was something that really stuck out to me. That was like, you weren't exposed like you didn't hear Metallica and Pantera
Machine
when
Head
you were
or
a
something.
kid.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like you were a teenager before you heard those things. Of course, that didn't mean fuck all to you. And so similarly, things derivative of that probably didn't mean as much to you either. You know?
Yeah.
So like, or you know what I mean? Things in that sort of stream or whatever. And so like, whereas like Machine Head fits in that, Machine Head fits in this transition period where we're also transitioning and like figuring out what's the music of our peers, but what's our music? What's this? And where are all these lines? And what's the music we're making? And where do all these things fit together?
Yeah.
And then that just so happens to be happening while all these other things are changing, and like no one knows what they're doing. But
Yeah.
And then you get to like the mid 2000s where we personally find our stride sort of creatively with what music we're making and where we want to be positioned and all that. And then also metal becomes like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like there's an argument that like in the mid 2000s that you have like several definitive metal records made that you could be like, what is metal? And you're like, just listen to Blackening. That's 80% of it.
Yeah.
You know, and then listen to Nocturnal by Black Dahlia Murder. Just those two. And you can get most of it. You know? Like there's going to be tributaries off of those two things that lead you to everything else.
Right.
Almost, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
And Machine Head as a band happens to like be relevant in all three of those conversations.
They're one of the few bands that, like, you know, for whatever you think about the albums that came out during that time, they like relatively healthily survived that whole time.
Right.
Because Supercharger was 2001 and Through the Ashes was 04?
3.
03?
Well, it came out in the US in 04.
Oh, you said that a minute ago. Yeah. And that's like, it's not like they took a long hiatus.
Right.
It's not like they went away. They didn't break up and then come back like a lot of bands did.
Right. Yeah.
Because another aspect of a lot of these articles was like notable things that happened this year in terms of bands being created or breaking up or reforming. And there was just so many entries for stuff like that. And yeah, they weren't one of those. They were there the whole time.
Right. This is the last thing I'll say in regards to new metal, rap, hip hop, and all that sort of stuff. Another thing I think is important is like what killed new metal or whatever is like, I feel like, you know, like Rage Against the Machine made like Battle of Los Angeles, and it's like, it's almost like that trio of like the first 3 Rage Against the Machine records. It's like, do you really need another rap rock? Like, does a rap rock record, like something as rigidly defined as a rap rock record, does another one ever need to exist besides those 3?
Yeah.
Is there anything to add to the conversation that's not done in those 3 records?
No, the answer is no. And then the way that most of these bands who were trying to do that were doing quote unquote rap rock, it wasn't as good as what Rage Against the Machine did at all.
Right. And
album or no, just like
right.
You know Zach De La Roca, dude.
And literally no one is. So
yeah.
Okay. I think that's it.
That's all I got. Yeah.
All right. I don't know, man. Only 4 hours. I don't know if it's enough. We've had this out.
I can keep going, man. I don't know. Save. Close.
Oh, that's ridiculous. I don't know how we're able to talk for so long.
Oh, shit.
It seems unethical.
No 2 people should truly be able to do this. And only the first hour was not music.
That's the thing, right? Is this not like we don't stay on topic?
Yeah. And seriously, I could just riff on on those lists for a long time.
It's fascinating. It's like a
God. I honestly didn't expect this. I expected to come in here and say, man, I fucking got bored with this time period really quick and moved on. And I did, but also there's a lot to say about it.
Yeah, because